A very warm good evening to everyone. I, CA Mahesh Garg, welcome you all to this virtual CPA meeting on how to crack ISA 2.0 assessment test organized by the Digital Accounting and Assurance Board of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and hosted by the Sangrur branch of NIRC of ICAI. Today in the VCM, we have on the virtual dais CA Charanjot Singh Nandaji, Honorable Central Council Member and Chairman of the Digital Accounting and Assurance Board of the ICAI, and our guest speakers CA MS Mehta ji, Dr. Vinay Saini ji, and Dr. Onkar Nath ji. Due to some personal reasons, CA Dayanivas Sharma ji, Vice Chairman of the Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, and CA Sahil Maheshwari, Chairman Sangrur branch of NIRC of ICI, could not join us today in the today's webinar. Friends, as we all know, DISA course is offered by ICI with the objective to enhance professional skills of its members. This course prepares members to offer services in the area of information security and business continuity, which are relatively new avenues as compared to traditional practice. DISA has also been recognized as one of the qualifications for system auditors. As the DISA 80 exam is fast approaching and is scheduled to be held on the Saturday 9th July 2022, the objective of today's VCM is to help members in cracking the said examination. And I'm quite sure all the participants will be highly benefited by today's VCM, and it will give them the required confidence and guidance on how to crack the DISA 80 exam. Before I request for the welcome address, I would like to formally introduce our chairman of the Digital Accounting and Assurance Board, CA Charanjot Singh Nandaji. Although sir needs no introduction. CA Charanjot Singh Nandaji is a Central Council member of the ICAI, and he is presently the chairman of Internal Audit Standards Board and Digital Accounting and Assurance Board. In my opinion, he is the senior most Central Council member and is currently serving his sixth term in the Central Council of ICA. He was a member of Quality Review Board set up by the Government of India. Besides from this, he was also a member of SEBI Advisory Committee on Primary Market during the year 2007 to 2010. He was also a member of SEBI Advisory Committee on Mutual Funds during the period 2007 to 2010. He has represented ICAI on SEBI Committee on Disclosures and Accounting Standards. He was also the convener of expert group constituted by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India on Investor Protection. He was the member of Southern India Federation of Accountants Committee on Professional Accountants in Business. He is also the chairman of Northern India Regional Council NIRC of the ICI during the year 2002 and 2003. Apart from this, in his long tenure as a Central Council member, he has served as either as a chairman, vice chairman, or member of almost all the committees of the ICI, whether it's a standing committee or a non-standing committee. In short, we can say that he is the Bhisham Pitama of our profession. Now I request here Charanjot Singh Nandaji for the welcome address.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome all of you to the VCM on how to crack ISA 2.0 assessment test. And before I go further, I would like to tell you that next Friday we have a VCM on how to crack ISA 3.0 assessment test. Ladies and gentlemen, ISA has created enormous number of glamorous propositions in our profession. People are very keen to do ISA, and I see so many people interested to do, and I get so many calls on a daily basis having issues and doubts in ISA. And therefore, I thought it fit that the board should conduct a program on how to crack the ISA exam so that they are very ably able to understand and put across their thought process. You are aware that ISA is a course which is needed to improve your technical and auditing skills. And very important point which you need to know is that you have to very candidly understand the nuances of creating a technology background. You have to have focus in automated and non-automated controls because that ultimately lead to a proper reporting system. You need to understand the important topics and all modules of ISA, and more importantly, tips to crack ISA 2.0. We will also give you some practice questions which will increase your benchmarking with respect to the questions that may come in the exam. And more importantly, on our side, we have a question bank where you can always go ahead and work. You need to understand that when you do ISA, we are not technology people. You need to think like an auditor. And more importantly, as an auditor, when you go on a technology background, you have to focus on controls. Why do frauds occur? Frauds occur when there is a basic weakness in the control environment. If there is control environment is totally strengthened, there can be no fraud. And therefore, every fraud ultimately entails a system wherein you can go ahead, investigate and find out a loophole in your entire system, in your control system. You have to understand that technology also has certain general controls and how you can use that for the betterment of your cyber health. More importantly, you need not, when you want to crack this exam, I suggest that do not go to cram. Go ahead and understand the systems, very importantly. And now I would like to tell you, when you do ISA, what is expected of you? The first thing, you are expected to understand the risk environment, because ISA technology is there to make you aware of the risk appetite of the management, the client, the stakeholder, the government or regulator, whosoever is it. And more importantly, you have to evaluate the controls in digital environment. If controls are proper, there are no chances of breach of that control. Thirdly, you need to be skilled in using tools and techniques which are used during IT audits. You should be well conversant with the technology. You have to understand technology because we are all already auditors, and for us, understanding the entire scheme of things is easy. And last but not the least is apply your understanding of audit and technology in practical scenarios. These practical scenarios will ultimately usher an environment wherein you are able to effectively use your technical skill honed during this course to add value to your clients, to the board, to the audit committee, whomsoever you will be referring. I will not speak much because we have three of the speakers and one of the person whom I know since the starting, Sri M.S. Mehta, a man who has always contributed to the cause of profession and particularly ISA. So not speaking much, I want to thank you all for coming here and being so enlightened about this profession. But I want to tell you, we chartered accountants have one thing in common. Every person wants to be always praised. But for chartered accountants, the saying goes in a different connotation. It says, तारीफ की चाहत तो नाकाम लोगों की फितरत है. तारीफ की चाहत तो नाकाम लोगों की फितरत है. काबिल लोगों के तो दुश्मन भी कायल होते हैं. We are a class apart which performs, and therefore bitterest of our enemies will also praise us for our perseverance, for our hard work, for our understandability, and more importantly, our technical skills. Not taking much of your time, I give back the dais to CA Mahesh Garg, who hails from Sangrur for further proceedings. Garg Saab, the dais is all yours.
Thank you, Nandaji, for the welcome address. Now, before starting the first technical session, I would like to introduce our guest speaker for this technical session, CA Manmeet Singh Mehta ji. CA Manmeet Singh Mehta ji is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and is serving the profession from the past 32 years. He has conducted statutory and operation audits of corporates, banks, societies, firms, trusts, etc. He is also a CISA from Isaka, USA since 2003. He has also completed Certified Fraud Examination course from ACFE, USA since 2019. He has completed Certified Data Privacy Solutions Engineer course from Isaka, USA since 2020. And he has also completed the DISA from ICI since the year 2002. He has also completed law graduation from Meerut University in the year 1992 and Bachelor of Science from Meerut University in the year 1985. CM Manmeet Singh Mehta ji is a regular faculty with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India for the Information System Audit course, that is DISA, conducting professional training programs on information systems audit, control and assurance practices for chartered accountants and systems professionals. Until date, he has conducted over 6,500 hours of programs for chartered accountants and audit professionals all over India. He is also a faculty for Information System Audit course conducted by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nepal. He is also a faculty with ICA providing training in MS Excel and computer-aided audit technique areas in certificate course of forensic auditing and fraud detection. Also conducted hands-on experience training on forensic analytics using the computer-aided audit technique tools at forensic labs. He has also conducted this training over 600 hours of training. He has also conducted seminars and trainings on information system audit, management practices, risk assurance, and bank audits, and use of computer-aided audit techniques, blockchain technologies at various branches of the ICAI. He is a regular faculty speaker at various seminars for members and students on bank audit of computerized branches, information system audit of bank branches, use of computer-aided audit techniques, accounting standards, etc. He is also a resource person of GMCS and orientation programs conducted by the various branches and chapters of ICI and Center of Excellence Jaipur. He is regularly conducting various virtual trainings on forensic accounting, data analytics using Excel as a productivity tool, dashboards, etc. Now I would like to invite CM Singh Mehta ji for the first technical session.
Thank you, Maheshji, for the wonderful introduction, I'll say. And a very good evening to all of you. Delighted to be on this VCM on how to crack ESA 2 AT exam. And I'm thankful to DAB under the leadership of Nandaji and also the Sangrur branch for initiating this VCM. Since the exam is pretty close, so it's a fit time, I'll say. It would be kind of an introduction for those who have not yet started and are yet to start, and would be strengthening for those who are already into the process on cracking this ESA exam. Now, friends, just going in with my screen share. So I believe the screen would be visible to you all.
Yes, very much, Mehta sir. Please carry on.
Thank you. So, friends, this ESA, I believe, has been your dream because you all joined ESA exam primarily, to get this certification in information system audit. And one of the hottest selling books and movies of the recent time was by the name of The Secret. Probably many of you would have seen the movie or read the book by Rhonda Byrne. The premise of book is thoughts are things. Whatever we think of, it converts into actuality. And friends, you all have dreamt of becoming DISA, and it is my firm conviction you all will be DISA. Because you have dreamt, you will achieve. One of the leading topics these days, many sessions are happening on that also, are called law of attraction, right? So many books are there, many other events are being conducted on this. So you will achieve, there is no doubt about it. But for that, you'll have to attract it. Okay. So what you need is a positive attitude for that. Whatever you're trying to do, you need an attitude with which you can attract it all. And friends, I generally give an example that only dreaming won't do. Action is also required. There's a very famous book again by the name of Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. And there's movie also on the same topic, Eat, Pray, Love, where Julia Roberts, who is the lead star in the movie, she gives a very interesting incident. She says every day a man goes to church and he prays, "Hey Jesus, meri lottery nikalwa de." And every day he'll go. And one day, Jesus appeared and he said, "Teri lottery to nikla do. Go first buy the ticket." Right? So friends, first thing which is required is buying the ticket. And here ticket is, you'll have to study. You'll have to do the questions. You'll have to practice. There is, friends, this DISA exam, much easier as compared to CA. But yes, it's not another CP program, right? So you'll have to study, you'll have to slog, okay? And you'll have to have throughout some kind of a positive attitude that, yes, I can do it. I find many times, some CAs saying that we can't do it, we don't have time, I'm too old, right? But I tell you, friends, age is no bar. Okay, only some kind of determination is required. I often give example of one of the students in my classes, Anjan. Anjan was probably 80 batch CA, and but he was very determined. He said, "I want to clear this." Okay, despite the age, despite the handicaps and everything, he just wanted to give the exam. Probably I'll say the only CA who'd been interacting long after the classes were over when I, gave the ESA class. After that also, every other day I used to get a mail from him, "Sir, I've studied this topic and could you explain this thing, or, send me some material. I want to explore this area further." And despite the age, I was said that because of his determination, I'll say, okay, he was very keen on doing it. And I can tell you, I was very, very happy when he cleared the DISA exam in the first attempt. Okay. Because, as I said, age is no bar. In other sessions, also, I've got CAs who did CA in 1972. There was another CA, who did his CA in 1972. But still, the dedication that was there and he cleared it. So, friends, age is no bar to it, right? The only thing you need is a positive attitude and a clarity of thought, right? Friends, often I get what I'll say, it's only an excuse. Sir, we're not having time. I'm busy throughout. But friends, it is a busy person who can prioritize, who can bring in time. One of my good friends says, पैसा और time कभी निकलता नहीं है, निकालना पड़ता है, right? So same way, what you need is you need to prioritize for money, you need to prioritize for time. Whatever time you spend on social media, if you can prioritize a bit of time for DISA, nothing can stop you. Okay. As I said, one thing which is required is determination, tenacity, which is there. You have it, you will get it. And I'm pretty sure all of you will clear DISA. Okay. The only thing, as I said, is required is a positive attitude and a determination that yes, I'll do it. Now, what is helpful if you want to really crack DISA? One is, friends, background material on DISA. Now, that is something I say is non-negotiable. You'll have to go through that. Okay. The only thing is you can look for important topics, you can look for important modules. Okay. And probably you'll have to do it maybe more than one times. Okay. Then only studying won't do. Going through the background material, you need to come to questions. I'm pretty sure when you come to questions, you'll be finding some kind of gaps. Because that time you'd be remembering, वो background material में क्या लिखा था, but क्या लिखा था नहीं याद आएगा. So you'll have to, do it couple of times. So practice questions, go to background material. Another thing which really helps is peer group. Okay. So 2-3 people, if you can join, because still you have time, right? Still you have time. If 2 or 3 people could come together, one benefit is one person's knowledge can be shared with others. Second is you could act as a motivator for each other. So that will be really helpful. Then this session, what I'll take is something about exams, what is important in exams, along with some examples, with some questions. Okay. So friends, as far as this exam is concerned, so all these modules have got some weightages. Okay. Module 1 is 20%, module 2 is 13%, 3 is another 13%. Module 4 is 20%, 5 is 14%, 6 is 13%, and 7 is again 7%. The passing score required is 60%. Now, the basic idea is look at these percentages. Look at these percentages. Look at what is the area where the weightage is more. Try to focus on those areas because there are more questions will be coming from that area. Okay. So, based on these percentages also, you can prioritize your time. You can prioritize how you want to take this exam. Now, this exam is a multiple choice objective questions. I think so, like the one you did for ET. Okay. So the answer is available in the various, the choices which are there. So approach should be not from cramming. Approach should be from the perspective of understanding. Okay. Because the answers are already there, right? So you don't need to cram. The only thing is you need to learn how to apply and how to get the tail of the question and how to crack that question. Where practicing with the various question banks, the one which is hosted on PQC, will help you a lot. Now, let us look at what IS audit is. Now, IS audit refers to any audit that encompasses, wholly or partly, a review and evaluation of automated information processing systems, related non-automated processes, and the interfaces between them. This is a definition given by Isaka on IS audit. Now, if you look at this definition, there are three aspects to it. First is automated information processing systems. Second is related non-automated systems and the interfaces between them. So if I just boil it down, what it talks about is number one is technology, number two is controls embedded, and third is interlinking between all these. Now, friends, one thing I'm pretty sure of is that we chartered accountants are control experts, right? So related non-automated processes, we are very good in controls, let me tell you. Second is interfaces between them. We are very good in linkages, because throughout our audit, what we do is we look at linkages, how one control interacts with another, how it interacts with the third, how payroll interacts with the costings and material management with others. So we know very good about linkages. The only thing where we need to strengthen a bit is technology. Okay, and I'm pretty sure once we strengthen technology, we could be the best IS auditors that could be there. Okay, so if you look at this definition, if you look at the areas which are covered in here, so it all boils down to 4 IT auditing concepts. Okay, which I can say you need to think about risk, you need to think about security, you need to think about control, and audit it relating to information systems. So this whole exam is about these 4 concepts. Okay, so anywhere while studying, while going through some questions, you have to focus on these 4 concepts. What is the risk involved? What is the security which could help it? What are the controls which can reduce all those risks? Okay, and how do we audit these controls? So your whole focus should be about these 4 things. Now you are expected to understand the information technology in general. Okay, I don't say you have to get into the nitty-gritties or deeply into the technology, but you need to know technology, right? If you're going to audit, you need to know technology. Okay, then you need to also understand the risks and deployment of various IT components. Okay, then functions and features of security and controls of these components. Okay, and what controls have been implemented to mitigate these risks. And lastly, how to audit these IT components, understanding the risks, reviewing the security, evaluating the control, identifying weaknesses, providing recommendations to mitigate these control weaknesses. So that is what this exam is about. So the focus has to be these areas: risk, security, control, and how to audit them. Okay, like the questions could be around, like, for example, ranking of risks in terms of highest to lowest, right? Question could be which is the best or which is the least effective controls, right? So point is, your questions will revolve around these 4 concepts. Okay, or the question would be about judgment in terms of concept. Okay, like they give a practical scenario and they tell you what you would be doing in this scenario, right? So a lot of practical approach also could be involved, because let me tell you, many of the people who are framing these questions are practically into these areas, right? So once, because they understand the practical areas, so they are able to evolve questions around that. Okay, so that could also involve your judgment into what will you be doing in these practical circumstances. So these are the areas the questions would be around. Okay, now if I just look at the exam, the whole exam, okay, we can broadly divide the questions into 2 categories. Questions could be based on facts, that is the technology or auditing standards, right? Questions could be based on your analysis, right? They'll be giving a context, giving a practical case study, and you have to take a decision that what is to be done in this scenario. So those are the 2 broad categories I'll put all the questions into. Now, I'll be giving you certain sample questions also, just so that you get the concept, because the main idea is how to what I'll say is grab the question. Okay. And like, for example, I'm giving you this question. Okay. And I'll be giving you 1 minute. So in your mind, you could think of, what the answer should be. Then we'll be discussing these questions. Okay. Okay, so I believe you would have gone through the question, and in your minds or probably on a notepad, you would have marked the answer also. Okay, now this question is about technology. This question is talking about the operating systems. Okay, now if you look at these answers which are there, okay, it's about supports virtual memory on external storage devices, supports secondary memory by allocating an area of hard disk. Okay, supports end user in carrying out specific functions, supports virtual memory by carving out a area of hard disk. Now, because this question is about technology which is involved by operating systems, so this question is about a virtual memory concept. Okay, virtual memory is secondary memory which behaves like primary memory, right? So whenever RAM, the capacity of the RAM is not sufficient, so what it does is it transfers some of the data into the the secondary memory. Okay, frees itself and load some more data. So the basic job of operating system is to carve out an area out of the hard disk, okay, which would act like a virtual memory. Now, this question was about technology. Okay, now let's look at another question. So I believe all of you would have marked the answer on your notepad or in your mind, wherever. Now, this question is about standards, right? This question is about auditing standards, right? So the question says IS department has been requested by executive management to review system software controls. The IS audit department does not have any staff, anyone with the knowledge in this area. Now they should, right? So I believe all of you are aware of SA 200 and all, where it says you should not accept an assignment where you do not have the skills, right? So first we need the skills, only then we should perform the audit. Okay, so here the correct answer would be obtain training in the system software, then perform the audit. You can't, just do an audit and say, sorry, I don't have the skills in this, right? And so you can't also learn on the job, right? So you need to have the skills. Now, this question is based on your understanding of the various auditing standards. Like the first was on was on the technology. This question is based on your understanding of the auditing standards and application of the auditing standards, right? So there's an auditing standard about knowledge of business, or you need to have the requisite skills. Only then you should perform the audit. Now look at this question. So I'm giving you some time so that you could read the question in your memory. You could just think about the question. Now, this question talks about a scenario, right? So this question is about a context, and you have to take a decision based on your understanding of technology and understanding of the related areas, right? Now, here the question says a standalone PC used for processing and storage of highly sensitive data. So number one, it's talking about highly sensitive data needs to be sent offsite for repairs. Okay, the IS auditor should recommend, right? Now, recommend means now you got to put on the hat of a IS auditor. Okay. It says hard drive is degaussed before dispatch. Now, degaussing is a process. Degaussing or demagnetizing is a process in which the entire data is wiped out from a hard disk. Okay. Now, it says the hard drive is degaussed before dispatch. Now, the challenge would be, if you look at the question, it says this hard disk has highly sensitive data. So the point is, if you just delete all the data, or rather you degauss and erase all the data, then the challenge could be then how to get the data back, right? Because it's a kind of a very sensitive data. Let's look at the C option. It says the hard drive is removed before dispatch. Okay. Now the point is, if the hard drive is removed before dispatch, okay, and the repair has to do something about hard drive, so how would the repair be done? Right? Then it says a confidentiality agreement is signed by the repairing company. Okay, NDs and confidentiality agreement is signed, but will it be implemented and how far it will be implemented? You got to think about. But if you look at option A, it says sensitive data is backed up. Means now you have a copy of the highly sensitive data and erased using appropriate utilities. So friends, there are hardware utilities, there are software utilities with which you can erase data. So it says data is backed up. So the issue of sensitive data is gone and erased using appropriate utilities. Then it is erased. Now, here, the privacy of your data is also, the confidentiality and privacy of your data is maintained, and still you are able to send it for repair. Now, this question is about analyzing the situation. This question is about analyzing the situation using technology, use of technology, understanding the technology, how you'd be, doing something in a practical situation. What would be your recommendation in a practical situation where, this kind of a situation or a scenario is. So this question is about analysis and decision making, right? So I've given you 3 examples of how different questions could be. You could be getting questions which are based on facts. Okay, facts like technology, auditing standards. You could be getting questions which are based on where you have to do some kind of judgment, some kind of your judgment would be involved. Now, in this judgment, understanding of technology and understanding of audit, both of that would be relevant. Now, friends, it's very important is to read the question very carefully. Okay, so you have to read the question and you have to find the stem of the question, right? What the question is trying to ask. And often, what you'd find is there'll be 1 or 2 distractors in the questions. which might not mean anything. They are just meant to confuse you. Okay. And many times what you'll find is you'll reach the position of 50-50, right? But getting the first among equals is often tough, right? That is where your conceptual clarity comes into play. So what you need to have is you need to have conceptual clarity, because you'll be getting a lot of questions like greatest, least, best, all these. So here, going to 50-50, yes, is possible by eliminating the distractors, eliminating the wrong choices. But often, finding first among equals is tough. Okay. So what you have to do is you have to think hardly about the question, think very hard about the question, read it correctly, maybe read it 1 or 2 times. Okay. Try to eliminate the distractors which don't mean anything, right? But which could be very enticing. If you have the conceptual clarity, it is easy to remove the distractor. But still, you got to make a decision out of the two choices which are left. This will often be the case, which you'll have, right? So you have to pick the best answer. Now let's look at this. Let's look at this question. Okay. So again, I'll give you 1 minute. Just in your mind, try to think of what the answer would be. Okay. So all of you, I believe, would have answered the question, okay, one way or the other. Now this question, whenever I give in a class, often people talk about mathematical process or statistical process, right? Statistical methods are used in assessing risk. There's no doubt about that. Okay, or mathematical processes are also used, but risk assessment is not a mathematical process, neither a statistical process. So these two are just distractors to distract you, to confuse you. Okay, but if you remove mathematical process as well as statistical process, still you have got two options to consider. Okay, but let us try to understand the whole process. Okay, so it talks about is a risk assessment. So if you look at risk assessment, the first step in risk assessment is to identify your assets. And if I tell two people, right, if I tell Mahesh, another, to tell me that what are the assets in this room, right? So probably, the list made by 1 and 2 both would not be same, right? Some would say furniture, other would say a table, chair, almirah and all. Somebody could say a computer, but other could say a keyboard, a mouse, a screen, a monitor. So the list won't be same. Means it is subjective. After identifying after identifying assets, the next step is to categorize those assets, classify those assets. Okay, so if you give two people the same classification, would you get the same classification from them? No. Somebody could say this is highly critical, other would say no, this is sensitive. So they could have different categorization and classification for those assets. So again, it is subjective, right? Next is you value those assets. Now, if you ask two people the value of an asset, again it is very subjective, based on history, based on how many people are impacted by that asset, based on the lost perception of that asset. Okay, so it will again be different for different people. Again, a subjective process, right? After that, you'll be looking at what are the threats and related vulnerabilities. So identification of threats again is a subjective process. Someone could say there are three threats, but other could say there are 6 threats. Okay, so again, it's a very subjective process. What are the vulnerabilities associated with those threats is again a subjective process. Okay. Now, was understanding what is the exposure, right? So exposure factor is again, a subjective process. Someone could say that 50% of the asset could be lost, but other could say no, only 60% would be lost. So you see, each person will have his own perception, right? And then controls to be implemented, which is again subjective. Somebody would want to put one control, other would want to put another control. So, my dear friends, if you look at a risk assessment, where every part of risk assessment, every step of risk assessment is a subjective process, how could it be anything else? So things you understood, there'll be distractors. You'll have to, come to the position of at least 50-50, right? Then it's easy. You got to think about the understand, what is the process involved, try to analyze and come up with an answer. Okay. Now look at this question. So again, I give you 1 minute. Okay. So I believe you would have, in your mind, you would have formulated what the answer would be. Okay. Now here, detection risk. Detection risk is one of the functions within audit risk. Okay. Audit risk is a function of inherent risk, control risk, and detection risk. Probably all of us know from our auditing days, right? So audit risk is a function of inherent risk, control risk, and detection risk. Now, the point is, what is detection risk? And if you look at the question, somebody who is not, I'll say, uh, very much aware about it, who doesn't understand the things, okay, then, he'll be, he'll be confused. He'll be confused by what, for example, controls that detect an error but fails to report the same. Okay, क्योंकि क्या आ गया? What you get is detection somewhere within the words. Okay, and control which is there. So very good sounding words are there, so you might go in for that if you don't understand the concept. Okay, similarly, controls that detect a high risk error, you could be confused by that also. Okay, because of the words which are there, detection and control which is there and risk is there. Okay, similarly, controls that fail to detect an error, again, you got the terms detect and control. So all these are what distractors, right? And I believe all of us know what is a detection risk. Detection risk is where whatever tools and techniques the auditor has deployed, still he is not able to detect an error, right? So here the answer is A. Okay, here the answer is A, which is in fact the definition of detection risk. Conclusion that material errors do not exist due to an inadequate test procedure. Okay, conclusion that material errors do not exist due to an uh, incorrect test procedure. Now here, if you see, neither the word control is there, nor detection is there, nothing, right? So you could get some kind of distractors. You got to eliminate those distractors. And if you understand the concept, you can very well analyze the situation and you could come up with the answers. Okay. Now, friends, there are 200 questions to be answered in 4 hours, right? So that is, you get approximately 70 seconds per question. Well, in my opinion, the kind of exam we have, if we just perform well, it should be doable in 4 hours. Okay, because you'd be getting some questions which could be very long, right? But again, you could be getting some questions which are short. Some questions you already know from the various question banks, right? You would have done. Okay, so it would be easier for you. But for some, you'll need bit of deliberation, bit of understanding. Only then you'll be able to do. So, friends, what is important is to manage your time, because see, our body has a way of reacting. Our body has a way of reacting whenever we are into an examination situation. Then there is some kind of adrenaline rush, right? And our mind automatically starts focusing, because that's a natural process whenever we are into an examination situation. Now, when you're focusing on the questions and you're doing it, then what happens is you lose track of time. Okay, because you're so focused into the questions, you lose track of time. So time management would be very, very essential. Okay, so you could do it based on how many questions which need to be done in so much of time. Maybe you could have it 25 questions in half an hour. So you could be having some kind of milestones. In half hour have I done 25 questions. 1 hour have I done 50 questions. Okay. Depending on your pace, depending on your assessment, you can increase or decrease the speed which is there. I still remember, when long back, I wrote my CISA exam. I still remember it was also a 4-hour exam, 200 questions to be answered. And honestly telling you, after some time, mind also turns into stone, right? You're not able to think. Okay. So, after that, there we had a facility, so I could just go out, had some water, and tea and coffee were also available. I had a tea, there at the center, and came back. But the problem was when it was 1 hour, so when I assessed, I had done only 35 questions in 1 hour. Then, the panic started. Because I had lost, track of time. And so my point is, you need to have some kind of time management. Okay, maybe it could be 50 questions in one block of 4 hour, or maybe 25 questions in a block of half an hour. So whatever time management, howsoever you want to manage your time, you could have those, right? As I said, some questions could be very long, some could be short. Like, look at this question. So, okay, I believe you would have gone through the question. Now, friends, this kind of a long question, in 1 minute, reading it, understanding it, applying it, and correlating it, sometimes, yes, becomes tough. Okay, but some questions would be short, some could be long. So, as I said, in a block, you should keep track of the time which is there. Now, here the question says, a long-term IS employee with strong technical background and broad managerial experience has applied for a vacant position in IS audit. Determining whether to hire this individual for this position should be based on individual's experience and what are the factors to take into consideration. Now, friends, many times you'll find a big scenario, right? So, one quick idea is you could just go to the last paragraph or so, then come back at the top. That's just one tip, wherever you got a long question, because what it is exactly asking in the end. So that way you could correlate whole of your, case study, right? Because sometimes you could even get a bigger case study which you need to handle, right? Now here it is about independence. The question is about independence. Okay. So here the answer is, okay, existing IS relationships, your ability to retain audit independence may be difficult, because this person was a part of line function. Now he's becoming a part of the IS audit team, right? So retaining independence with his, old colleagues and all, that becomes tough. Okay, that is why, if you look at the standard for auditing standard for independence, it says the audit should be independent of line function, so that the person can maintain objectivity, right? So, here applying that standard, you can answer it. But as I said, some questions would be long, some would be short. So depending on the situation, okay, uh, you can answer the questions, right? Unfortunately, there is no negative marking, so you must answer all the questions. Okay, because there's no negative marking, you must answer all the questions. Okay, and if at all you don't know it, try to eliminate some of the choices, and in the rest, try to make an intelligent guess. Okay, I won't say flip up the coin or something, but what I'll say is make an intelligent guess, right? Based on your overall understanding of the situations. Okay, and I believe all of you have got a good experience as chartered accountants. Uh, think like an auditor, and you can do it, I believe. Okay, now for some questions, you could be able to strike the right answer straight away. Okay, and but for other questions, even after reading questions maybe once or twice, you are not able to sorry, you are not able to get at the exact answer, right? uh, Basic idea is, if you are skipping it, right, take a pencil along and just mark there, which questions you're skipping. So later on, if you get time, you could just revisit those questions and do it, right? But the best approach is take a decision there and then and answer it, because many times you won't get time to come back to the questions. So it's better to take a decision, right? And another very, very important thing is, once you have answered, forget it and go ahead. Because I can tell you one thing, friends, if you revisit that question, you are bound to get confused. Pakka confused होंगे आप, right? Because there is a very interesting book by Tim Gladwell, uh, which is by the name of The Blink. Okay. So what he says is that most of the decisions have been made in a blink, right? See, you have got your gut instinct, something I call as gut instinct. Okay. Inside you, okay, there is that divine guidance. There is universe which is guiding you. It is your subconscious which is doing a lot of things about which we are not aware of. Okay. Because naam is subconscious, hai, right? So important thing is that subconscious, it guides you, right? So important point is, take a decision, answer it, and go ahead. Because if you come back to that question, then you'll start getting a lot of other thoughts. You'll feel ye bhi theek hai, ye bhi theek hai, ye bhi theek hai. So better, what than a fill it, forget it. So same, fill it and forget it. Okay. See, it's only you need to revisit it because you get some additional insights, okay, or some data. Like you're doing a question, then you start thinking, okay, if this is right, then that was wrong. Right. So those situations you could go back, erase, because you have to carry along a HB pencil for marking all those OMR sheets, right? So you modify your answers, and but for that, erase it properly, right? Now, important thing is, take one question at a time. Okay, take one question at a time, read it fully, read it very carefully, and as I said, take a pencil along. Try to mark what the question is trying to ask, because many times, the English also could become dicey. Okay, so what you need to do is identify the stem. What is the question trying to ask? Okay, then underline maybe that core concept. Try to link it and link it with the various choices which are there in the answers, right? For reading the answers, it will be a good idea. Take a ruler or scale along so that you could just slide the scale, read it, right? Because otherwise, you could be reading some other, because our eyes have got a something called as the peripheral vision, right? So we can, it's not necessary we read only what we are reading. So we could go beyond that, right? So it's a good idea to have a scale so that you can mark only the question, okay? And you could use a pencil again to speed read and understand what it is coming up, right? Important thing is, underline the core concepts which is being tested. Read all the choices. Maybe, like there's a question which you're done in a mock test, right? Or in a sample test. Now you see the question and you blindly go there and take the option which you're done in the mock test. Don't do that. Read the answer, read the question, read the answer, right? Because the question could have been rephrased or reworded, right? Okay, so earlier in the mock test, it was, the best option. Now it could be the worst. Last time it was most, now it is least. So, the answer would change. So please, please, please read the question. Only then answer it, right? Now, just look at this question, right? So my question is, have you in your mind or on your notebooks, have you noted down which according to you is the correct option? Because this is one question where in a classroom environment, where whenever I'm in, when I ask, I get many wrong answers, right? So my question is, if you have already gone through the question, in your mind you have the answer. Now, what I want to do is, I just want to underline one thing, which is IS auditor. This question you have to answer with the perspective of an IS auditor. My question is, read it again. My question is your answer different now? I believe for many it would be, right? Because if you just look at the question and you start answering it, right, you start thinking from the management's perspective, right? So it is talking about the probability installed a security patch which crashed the production server, right? So first is apply the patch according to patch release notes. Okay. So my question is it job of the auditor to apply the patch? Of course, no. Of course, no. Now you start correlating. Is it the IS auditor who will thoroughly test the patch before sending it to production? Again, the answer is no. Is it the IS auditor who will approve the patch after doing a risk assessment? Again, the answer is no. Is it the IS auditor who will ensure that a good change management process is in place? Yes, he'll be looking at these areas, that a good change management process is in place. So the point which I'm saying is, underline the stem, underline the concept, try to correlate the whole thing with that concept. Okay. Now, friends, get the fundamentals very, very clear. That's very, very important. Have the fundamentals clear. You got to think like an IS auditor. I think so. Your auditors. So I say it's not difficult. The only thing is get a bit of hang of technology. That's all what is required, right? And please don't bring in your personal experiences and answer the question from past data. Okay. And don't think of what is practice in your office, right? You got to think macro. You got to think global. So remember, in a classroom, whenever I ask this question, which one will you buy first, the hardware or the software? I can tell you, my question to you, which one will you buy first, the hardware or the software? Right? So I can see your answers, but I believe whatever happens in class would be replicated all across. 96 or 98%, I'll say answer hardware. So then I ask a very simple question. My question is, will you buy a i3 Pentium with a 256 MB RAM or something, and you go to SAP and you say, I want a SAP or I want an ERP which will fit into my computer? Does it happen that way? No. Solution is finalized, hardware requirements are finalized, and then they are acquired, right? It's not that you go and buy the hardware first and then go for software. right? No. But our answer is often prejudiced by what we have in our office, right? Because in our offices, we mostly buy a hardware where, the OEM and Windows are all jumbled in, rest the vendors put in, and he gives it to us. So effectively, we have never bought a software. So you can't imagine, we need to buy a software also. So the point which I wish to make is, you got to think at a global scale. You got to think at a very macro scale. Don't think of what is happening in your office, and don't the means say your practical experience, let it not be judgmental to your answering your questions. What you need to think of is what is required as as per the ESA's line of thinking. Right? Don't think of your office. Think at a global scale. Think at a macro scale. Right? Now, among two choices which are similar, pick the one which is more macro and bigger in nature. You will be finding these kind of situations where you could have more than one choices, and go for one which is macro and bigger in nature. Right? For example, look at this question. So I think all of you would have answered it correctly, right? So in this question, if you look at, controls act to reduce the probability of the cause of a loss occurring. Okay. Again, some kind of preventive controls prevent the cause of loss occurring. This is also correct. This is also correct. Right. But if you look at the D option, it says reduce the probability of cause of loss occurring and reduce the amount of loss if the cause of the loss does occur, right? So it's talking about preventive controls as well as detective controls as well as corrective controls, right? So this answer D is macro in nature, right? It's not that option B is wrong or option C is wrong. They're also right. But look at a macro perspective, right? If there's an answer which is more macro in nature, go for that. Okay. So in the exam, you could also adapt a process of elimination. So rule out apparently incorrect choices and go for the right one. So this is very useful, especially when there are negative questions. You could go with the process of elimination. Like look at this question. So I believe Vinayji has also joined. So Vinayji, I'll just take 4-5 minutes to conclude it.
Sure, sir. No problem. Go ahead.
Right. So I believe all of you would have answered the question. Now, if you look at this question is talking about message digest or hash, right? Now, it is talking about what is the objective of hash, right? So here you have to eliminate the wrong choices, right? So is it about data confidentiality? No. Is it about data availability? Again, no. It's about communication delivery? Again, no. Because hash is where you encrypt using an algorithm the data into a fixed bit output generated in such a way if original changes, output changes. So what is objective? Objective is data integrity. So these kind of questions, you got to eliminate the wrong choices to reach the right one. Right. So let me tell you, in a multiple choice objective questions, elimination is a wonderful approach you can use. Okay. Now you may need probably all of those 4 hours to answer these 200 questions. All right. So I mean, say you need to practice setting also, because that's the art we need to understand, right? Now, as I said, after some time, your brain could turn into a stone, right? So your concentrations level may come down, right? So because average human attention span is not more than 45 minutes to 1 hour. So you could just take a little break. You can just have a sip of water, look away, get back your concentrations, take a few deep breaths, stretch yourself, again, get back to the task. Okay. Now, friends, as I said, exam is not expected to test your memory, but your understanding. Okay. So you have to pay close attention to terms such as most, best, least, not, all, never, right? So try to underline these terms so it becomes easy for you. So have conceptual clarity and prepare well in advance. Okay. Now, if you look at this question, so I believe all of you would have noted your answers. Now, this question is, which of the following would an IS auditor consider to be most helpful when evaluating the effectiveness and adequacy of computer preventive maintenance program? And if you look at the options, all the options are correct. Right? These are the kind of questions where you need conceptual clarity. Okay. Because if you look at the question, all the options are correct, but the question is asking most. Okay. If we analyze the options, so it's talking about a written preventive maintenance schedule. That, for example, we got a written preventive maintenance schedule. Every 15 days, you got to run the scan disk. Every 15 days, you run the antivirus scan. Every 15 days, you need to vacuum clean your printers. These are the preventive maintenance schedule which is to be done. My question is, will it help? Yes, it will help. Okay. But if you look at option C, it says regularly scheduled maintenance log. D says what is to be done. C tells you whether it was done or not. Because the schedule will tell you whether those tests were performed or not. So definitely C is a better option as compared to option D. Okay. If you look at option A, that talks about vendors' reliability figures. Yes, they could also help us, because based on the reviews, based on the reliability of vendors, they could also help. But if you look at system downtime log, B says system downtime log. Every 15 days, antivirus scan was to be done, was done. Every 15 days, scan disk was to be run, was run. Every 15 days, vacuum cleaning was to be done, done. But still, the downtime log tells you that downtime is high. Can you call that program effective? No. Okay. So, which is the most objective evidence you have? Your most objective evidence is what? The system downtime log. Because effectiveness is what? Reaching your goals, reaching your objectives. What is the objective of preventive maintenance program? Is to reduce the downtime. So the most effective evidence is what? System downtime log. Okay. So friends, ensure that you are marking the answers correctly. It's very important that you take some kind of a ruler or a scale, slide it around and do it. Because in the OMR sheets, what could happen is, I have faced it once, one answer in the next, then next, then next, and the whole thing goes for a toss. And you're already tense, right? So your tension simply mounts. So use a scale or a ruler, to ensure that you are marking the required choices. Okay. And again, as I say, form a small study group or an e-group. Okay. Interact amongst yourself. Not too many people, 2, 3 people is good. Okay. You can interact, you could motivate each other. Okay. And it's a prestigious exam, right? It is, a prestigious exam. And at this stage, failure is simply a no, right? So take your family and friends into confidence. Okay. So you have still, around 5-10 days which are there. So take them into confidence, and you have to make sacrifices, right? So maybe evening outings or something with the family for a couple of days. You can keep them on reserve. Okay. And self motivation is the best motivation, right? So remember, you are taking a prestigious exam. Visualize, yourself receiving congratulations from your friends and others of having cleared the exam. And at the last, I'll just say one thing. Yes, I can do it, and you can do it. So what you need is a feeling that yes, I can do it, and you can do it. Friends, this is all entirely doable. Nothing about that. Only need is your determination that you can do it, and you can do it. So you've all dreamt. It is my firm conviction you all can do it. Okay. And I wish each one of you the best in the exam. Okay. So if any queries you have, my mail is there, msm@msmehta.com. Just drop me a mail if there's any confusion, any query you have. To the best of my ability, we'll sure try to resolve your query. So thank you very much, friends. And again, we got wonderful faculty, Vinayji, who is there. And I'm pretty sure that you all would be benefited from his experience and his explanation of the areas in this area. So back to you, Mahesh. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you, CM Manmeet Singh Mehta for such an engaging and knowledgeable technical session. It's always a pleasure to listen to you, sir. Now it's the time for question and answer session. If any member is having any question regarding the first technical session, they may drop us a message. Sir, there is a question from Kolkata from Mr. Anirudh Chakrabarti.
Okay.
How to start the answering process?
See, the best way is go sequentially. Right from the first question started, read each question, try to attempt it there and then, because you won't get time for coming back, right? So conserve your time. Do take one question, crack it, go to the next one. So do it sequentially, right from the first question. Because if you start with you think like first I want to go through all the questions, then I'll come answering them. You won't have the time. So best way is start doing it from the first question itself. Do it sequentially. Another important thing: as soon as you answer a question, mark it on the OMR sheet, because many times what happens is you are marking on the question and later you want to transfer. And I have faced it once, friends. वो गलती से एक अगले में लग गया and then the whole thing went for a toss. So I had to erase all this and come back. So answer it there and then transfer it to your OMR sheet. So that's the best approach. My experience.
Next question is from sir, Mr. Manoj Rawat from Delhi. Nowadays, as banks are merging, doing DISA is of any use or not?
A tough question, right? See, number one is knowledge always helps. And it's not only a question of bank audit. Today, you cannot conceive of any area where technology is not involved. Even your plain act of doing a financial audit would be based on what? The controls of your ERP systems, the control of your accounting systems, the controls which are embedded in all the systems which are in place. So if those controls are not reliable and you're not sure about the controls, my question is, how can you do a financial audit also? So understanding those areas, I believe, is of quite importance.
Sir, next question is from CA Siva from Hyderabad. Mind map is another technique which may be used for each module, and it helps in revising the content quickly before the examination.
Yes. Yes, so I'll surely suggest to build a mind map. Rather, what you could do is, even while reading, take a pencil or something, right? So try to underline the things. So one is the act of the physical action again links your brain to that. Second is you could just make out notes or small things which are build a kind of your own mind map. So that way, I mean, say you're very correct that you can easily do it. And last minute, you won't have much time for going through the whole material. So just go through those notes you prepared or the mind map you prepared becomes easy for you. Agree with that?
Next question is from Miss Sweta from Navi Mumbai. Sir, when the question confuses us between least, most likely, concern, can you please throw light on this?
Yeah, sure. See, that's what I said. Many of these questions could be most, least, best, right? And selecting first among equals is always tough, right? So try to eliminate, distractors which are there, right? So I'm pretty sure most of the times you'll be able to reach 50-50, right? Two of the choices you can easily, eliminate. And yes, selecting first among equals, that is where you need conceptual clarity. That is where I say that you'll have to see. That's why I said, going through the background material is important. Just you can't bank only on, mock test or something. You need to go through the material also because that will give you the foundation and conceptual clarity.
Okay, sir, there are no more questions. With a once again,
Thank you,
thank you,
Mahesh.
sir.
Thank you.
We-
I hope, the answers have
yeah.
been helpful to the participants.
Now, before starting with the technical session, I would like to introduce our guest speaker for this session, Dr. Vinay Saniji. Dr. Vinay Kumar Saniji has more than 18 years of experience in software development, information security, training, research, and consultancy. He holds BTech in computer science and engineering and MTech in information technology and PhD in computer science and engineering blockchain. He has qualified CISA exam in his Wipro and Infosys certified faculty. He has published many research papers in journals and proceedings of international and national conferences. He has delivered many guest lectures on various information technology, risk management, IT security, IS auditing related concepts in Sri Lanka, IEI, ICAI, TIPS, and many more places across India and abroad. Now I request Dr. Vinay Kumar Saniji to start the technical session.
Thank you, Mahesh. Thank you, Mehta sir. I think it's always an honor to share stage with you. And thank you for passing the torch to me. And I'll definitely make sure that the same continuity is maintained. Thank you for your support, sir. Thank you very much. So good evening to all. And thank you to ICI to set up an interaction where we can continue our process of learning and achieving assurance in the process of this course. The purpose behind this course is to enable chartered accountants and members across India to take up future opportunities and to address the changing pattern and trends in information system auditing. So yes, there was a question somebody said banks are merging now. So do we really think there is enough scope for this certification? Let me tell you, we need to have a clarity about the purpose here. The purpose of the course is information system auditing, assurance of information system. Now, it could be any scope, any domain, like it could be finance, it could be security, it could be performance, it could be operational assurance, IT asset management, compliance audit, governance audit, security audit. Means there are so many domains, and the course doesn't underline specific domain area like it's only exclusively for banks, right? So we need to understand the purpose of this course is broader. And if we don't have that clarity, I think clearing this exam again would be a tough task, because if we cannot think like an IS auditor, it will be very tough to become an IS auditor, right? So that's a fundamental requirement. So having said that, I think I was observing the various questions that were coming at the fag end, and I think Mehta sir really excellently covered all those techniques and approaches you should follow. But I think now it's time to absorb those things and practice those things so that you become perfect in that, or perhaps your brain can get tuned to repeat the same patterns when actually your exam comes, right? So from that point, I think you are moving in the right direction. But yes, mastering that skill, that practice is what you are supposed to do. Now I'll move on. I'll quickly take some of the concepts. Like I'll quickly go through the topics which have been allocated to me, like module 3 and module 4. I'll have a very quick, fast coverage of the terms, and then I'll take up some questions, and then I will take up a small strategy. I will provide you a strategy how you should plan your exam and what are the key performance indicators or critical factors for you to clear the exam, right? So I hope I'll be able to cover all of your concerns, and in case if you have any queries, doubts, so please make a list of those questions. I'll try to address them as soon as possible after the quick discussion on the topics. So let me just pick up first the module 3, which is part of your course, and I'll quickly go through the terminologies first, like what terms are there, and I'll quickly give you a brief of those terms so that you can make up your mind about what this module is and what kind of questions would be there in the exam. Okay, so here we go. I hope you can see the screen. So the title is Governance and Management of Information System. So idea is, most of the time there's a perception in the market that IS audit is all about testing IT systems, checking whether IT is delivering value or not, and checking whether IT operations are happening correctly or not, if there are controls in place properly or not. But let me tell you, there's a misconception that IS audit is only limited to these IT level operations. No, it's beyond that. And that's where this module come into picture. It's not just the IT operation in an organization. Perhaps it's the whole process, the structure, like how the organization is working towards the business objectives. What are the governance practices? What are the management practices? So with this module, you'll have an understanding that the IS audit course is not just limited to assessment of controls in an IT setup, right? So IS auditors have a lot of future opportunities or perhaps practice opportunities in the domain of governance, risk, compliances, and performance measurement and performance assurance. So these are the 4 aspects which are being the main theme of this module, module 3. So we'll quickly take up all those terms which are there in this module, and then I'll quickly give you the meaning and understanding of those terms, and we'll try to take some questions also based on this module. So now, first of all, enterprise governance. Every organization is running some business, and they need to ensure that there is clarity about how to do the business, who will do what, and there are proper guidelines for everybody to follow, and there is no conflict of interest. To achieve all those things, we need to have a practice in place, right? We need to have some set of activities to be done. So this is what enterprise governance try to achieve. So enterprise governance is a practice where we are focusing on defining set of activities, like we must have something to evaluate the whole operations of the organization. We must have something to direct the operations. We must have something to monitor the operations. So in simple words, there are 3 terms: evaluate, direct, and monitor. So if we have set of roles and responsibilities defined, set of practices defined for evaluating business, directing business, and monitoring business, I think our target of enterprise governance would be achieved. So it means every organization must define governance practices. The objective would be evaluate, direct, monitor business operations, right? So with this, if we have this thing in place, if we have these practices defined, it means we'll have clarity. Okay, this person will do this task. Like this is the person who will be handling, like, what do you call, HR department, then finance department, IT department. And on top of that, we have strategic committee, steering committee. Strategic committee will take on, okay, what future strategies should be adopted? If we are not meeting the performance, what new strategies has to be adopted? Whereas steering committee will take care of, okay, this particular project, this particular department is lacking resources or needs some more reinforcement. So we need to provide proper provisioning or perhaps proper resources in due course of time as per the requirement of the circumstances of business operations. So the idea is we need to have practices in place so that we can run our whole enterprise in a smooth manner. But the practices which top management has to do would be different than the line management, like the managers who are guiding the teams, their projects, and other people. But the top management, where we have board of directors, right? We have like other stakeholders, shareholders, right? So those who are on board, who are the decision makers, who are the people who set up policies, they have different role. That's why this term enterprise governance is defined, which is for the top management to set up the practices to guide and monitor the organization. Now, the concept of this enterprise governance has evolved over the period of time. When we talk about some classical times, maybe 50, 100 years back, so the approach was like, we are setting up a business to have maximization in our performance and maximum profit should be there. But over the period of time, when we face globalization, we realize that, yes, it's not just about profit maximization. We have to understand the customers, we have to understand the compliances, we have to understand the competition. And there are so many other factors which are there in running a business. We just cannot only focus on profitability. If we focus on profitability, sooner or later, maybe we are enjoying some returns now, but there's no assurance that this will be sustainable. Because now we have a globalized world where you are not limited to a particular region. You can do business globally. So there are competitors, there are different legal systems, compliances. So we need to have a balance. We just cannot only focus on business governance. So business governance was the concept perspective where governance is only focusing on profit maximization. Whereas corporate governance focus on conformance, compliances, stakeholders, with focus on covering the whole enterprise, not individually looking at any area or any aspect. So idea is, if you want to have effective enterprise governance, so you have to pick both these ideas, like business governance practices and corporate governance practices, and there should be a balance between these two, right? And if you look at the actual scenario, okay, theoretically we are saying, okay, let's have a balance between corporate governance and business governance. But ideally, in the real world, you will see that you have an IT-based ERP system automatically syncing all the business operations, and you are at the board level, you are having dashboard, and you have to make sure that you are exercising all governance practices. Means everything is IT driven. So how to define a framework or a governance practice so that we can achieve balance between corporate governance and business governance, and we can ensure proper enterprise governance practices. Theoretically, okay, we want to achieve this, but how to do it practically? So we need to have a practice in place which can be implemented. So then there was a research around it, and then it was realized that we need to have a proper, well-defined framework which will cover all the objectives. And let's name it as a practice, specific practice, like governance of enterprise IT. It means that we are driven by IT, and IT is the enabler. All operations, all activities are managed through IT. So let's define a framework which will cover governance aspects as well as operational and management aspects. So we should not segregate the concepts. We must have an integrated approach where we can set up governance practices and, of course, management practices also, but they should be treated as a whole system, single system. Let's not segregate that, because if we segregate that, there will be interoperability issue. There will be lack of coordination. So we have to cover both aspects together. We need to have an integrated practice so that our stakeholders are happy. We have good profits. We have optimization. We have proper practices in terms of compliances also. We are delivering value. Customers are happy. We are managing risk. So there are so many approaches, so many objectives. If we want to achieve all these things, we need an integrated set of practices, well-defined. There should be no confusion, no overlapping, no ambiguity. That's why this concept GEIT is there. So objective is to achieve all those objectives which are there on paper, like enterprise governance, corporate and business governance balance. And of course, we have IT-based setup. So let's have a framework GEIT, which will help us in implementing all our objectives, right? So now, if GEIT is good, we can have, what do you say, good service quality, higher service quality, improve business operations, credibility, market value, everything will improve. But if we have bad IT governance or bad GEIT practice, this would create more risk, and perhaps we may see that we are out of business sooner or later. So we should always focus on good IT governance practices or good GEIT practices. Now, how to achieve that? So means we must have a framework where we can clearly understand what is governance and what is management, and how we can integrate them and can implement them. So here comes a best practices in the market. There are so many frameworks which have been proposed, and there has been regular revision to address recent development and demands of society. So one popular framework which you might have studied is like your COVID framework, right? Control objectives for IT-based systems driven by IT. So you might have seen that there are various concepts like principles, enablers, and then there are business processes which address governance, risk, and compliance objectives, right? So governance is about what? Again, I repeat, evaluate, direct, monitor, and management is about planning, building, running, and monitoring. So there is clear understanding of what we want to achieve by governance and what we want to achieve by management. A clarity is very important. Otherwise, during exam questions, you will be badly stuck up, right? Beside this, what terms which are there, the relevant terms in this module are related to risk management, right? Because risk management is something which is fundamental problem for every organization. Every organization wants to have a proper practice to address all risk associated with their business operations, be it process risk, finance risk, strategy risk, technology risk. There are so many domains again, but every organization want a well-structured practice to address all potential risk in the organization. So there are terms, I hope these are very simple and clear to understand. You must have clarity, and there should be no confusion between the terms like threat and exposure. You should not have confusion what threat is and what is exposure. And you should not treat both as replaceable or interchangeable. This is where you get stuck up in the question, because there is a lack of clarity between similar terms. So that's where you feel that certain questions are very complicated, because you are actually lacking in a thin difference between two terms. Threat is basically an external attempt, right, to harm the system. Whereas exposure is that your system is exposed to certain risk which may get materialized, right? But threat is an actual attempt to harm the system, right? So that's the difference between these two terms. Same way, you may have confusion. What is vulnerability and what is exposure, and how they are related? Vulnerability is weakness in the system, right? And if it is exposed, there'll be a threat, right? Many times there are weaknesses, but they are not exposed. But if any weakness is exposed, then there is a possibility of threat sooner or later, right? So this is how you should try and understand. Likelihood is like probability of occurrence of a risk, which is a critical factor in evaluating overall magnitude of risk, right? So let's say there are 10 risks that you have identified for your business operations, right? Now, which one is most critical? Which one is least critical? How you will evaluate, how you will measure this? You can measure this based on two factors. One is likelihood, that is probability of occurrence of threat or risk. Second is impact of risk. And you have to cover these both factors, and you have to multiply these measurements. Like you have to measure the probability, you have to measure the impact, multiply both factors, and then get the overall magnitude of the risk. And based on this, you can rank your risks, and then you can have categories: higher or very high, medium, low, very low. And accordingly, you can define your responses: either accept, either reject, mitigate, either share, or either avoid. So these are the four possible responses that you can take for all the identified risks, right? So risk management is a very important practice area for every organization, and you must understand the whole process. First of all, you must understand why it is a cyclic process. The reason is risk is not a static entity. It's a dynamic entity. It keeps on changing, keeps on evolving with time. So you must have a set of practice which can cover this process again and again. So first step in this task or cycle is to identify the risk. So you have to make the list of all potential risks which may affect your organization's business processes. Now, second, once you have identified the risk, you have to evaluate, as I mentioned, calculate probability of occurrence, calculate magnitude of impact, and then multiply both the factors, and then get the overall magnitude of the risk, and then make a ranking. After the ranking, define the risk response. which risk you will accept, which you will avoid, which you will mitigate, and which you will share. And based on that, you can come up with your strategies. Okay, I want to mitigate, logical access threat is there. I want to have biometric with username, password supported with two-factor authentication, that way, right? So you have to define what practice should be there for every response you are defining. Say there may be some area where you will define, okay, I will accept the risk because there is nothing much we can do. It's a kind of inherent risk. Okay, but that's not the end of the job. You have to define risk appetite. If you are accepting the risk, up to what level you will accept. But if it goes beyond it, you will come up with some kind of alternative mechanism to address the risk, right? So risk appetite is the specification, or specifying the risk in financial terms, or a limit or a threshold, so that we can see if the risk or impact of risk is within that threshold, it is acceptable. If it is not, if it is beyond that, we have to come up with some kind of practices, either sharing or mitigation, right? That way you can plan. Now, you listed the risk, you identified the ranking, you defined the responses, you identified the control and other responses. So this is your risk management plan. That for this risk, you will do this, okay? And then you will implement all your actions or plans which you have defined, right? Based on your plan, you will have implementation. Somewhere you will implement the controls. In certain areas, you will have insurance cover or sharing, like you want to have partnership or whatever responses you have. And finally, you will evaluate whether the practices you defined for managing risk are effective or not. You will have assessment. And during assessment, you will observe that you may identify some new risk, or maybe you see that, okay, our controls are effective now, but there are other risks which are having impact on the organization. So this cycle will keep on moving. It's a cyclic process. So, and every organization must have an effective risk management process, right? So this was an important topic. And you may get a lot of questions, maybe some questions around principles of COVID 5. Like these are the 5 important principles, and every implementation of COVID 5 recommended practice should be based on these principles. Like if you want to do risk management, like there's a process in COVID 5 risk management. Let's say you are implementing some of the activities of risk management, but please keep into mind that you are covering these principles. So these principles would be like a guideline to you when you are implementing any practice of COVID, right? So the idea behind this principle is to ensure that your perspective and your implementation and your vision is correct in place, whether you are planning, whether you are implementing. Every individual involved in the organization must have clarity about his role. So the principles are important, fundamental, pillars of this framework. So you must have understanding of these 5 principles, like what they are, because you may get question like which one of these principles talks about this, right? So you have to select the one. Same way, there are enablers. So these are the enablers which will facilitate, right? When you are implementing any risk management, any COVID process, you need to use, apply, or implement these enablers. These are facilitator which will help you in implementing the COVID processes. So these are 7, like principle, policies, framework. So means you have to consider principles. These are the principles. So these are the first component which you will use as an enabler during implementation. Then processes should be well defined. Information should be documented properly. You must have skilled people, competence, proper standard culture should be there. Ethics should be there. So these are important factor for the critical success of your COVID implementation. And now how COVID address governance. So governance, there are 5 processes. These top 5 processes of COVID are governance driven, and rest 32 are for management. And you talk about risk management. So risk management is addressed by 2 processes, one at governance level, one at management level. And there's an important concept in COVID. Perhaps it's not just limited to COVID. You can have it in any organization. The objective is to have clear specification of responsibility, accountability for all the people, all the roles which are there in the enterprise. So there's an important tool, you can say, RACI chart, which can be used to specify the roles of the people involved in the operations. Like if you talk about a practice called risk management, which is APO 12. APO 12, manage risk in COVID, they have an activity called collect data. So collect data, if you talk about board has no role. Chief Executive Officer should have information about this process, collect data, or activity, collect data. So R stands for responsibility, A stands for accountability, C stands for consulting, means your role will be to provide valuable inputs. For example, collect data is the process. The role of compliance department or compliance committee is to provide critical inputs in how to collect data, whether they are meeting compliance, like data privacy related compliance, okay, or maybe there would be compliance because of mandatory disclosures. When you are collecting the data, how you have to collect and how to preserve it. So they must give proper inputs, critical inputs, valuable inputs. That's why the role is C, consulting. They will provide inputs. And the last one is information, I. They must have information of that thing. For example, Chief Executive Officer must have the information on how the data is collected, right, for risk management. So this is a very important tool, RASI chart. You may get question around it. Finally, compliance is addressed by COVID. There's a process called monitor, evaluate, and assess compliance with external requirements. So here they cover practices for compliance assurance. So COVID is a best practice framework for governance, risk, compliance, and many more business operations. You can see all the blocks here. So compliance, again, RASI chart is there for addressing various roles. Finally, the topic, which is very important beside governance, risk, compliance, risk management. Let's say you have a practice COVID framework. You have defined governance practice, risk management, compliances, and everything is defined. RASI chart is there to ensure segregation of duty, avoid ambiguity, but still the assurance is not guaranteed, assured. What you need is performance measurement also. You have all the practices, but if you don't measure something, you cannot really achieve assurance. So to measure the performance, you need to have some practice in place. So there are terms in which there are practices like balance scorecard. And if you go and check the literature, many times it is referred as balance scorecard. Many times it is referred as IT balance scorecard. So there is a slight difference when it comes to implementation. Primarily, the balance scorecard covers 4 factors: financial, customer, business process, learning, and growth. So if you measure all these 4 aspects and you define KPIs and targets, so what you have to do is just monitor and see whether you have achieved targets or not. If you haven't achieved targets, you have to come up with some kind of initiatives so that you can keep your organization process up to mark to ensure assurance, right? But if you see, when it comes to IT balance scorecard, there is a change in perspective, right? So when we talk about finance, our primary focus is like profitability, only the financial aspects. But if we upgrade this and we go to corporate contribution or corporate orientation, so it's not just the financial factor. We are also talking about the stakeholders consideration or perhaps other social factors which are critical. Because nowadays we are doing businesses in a connected world. It's not that we are segregated and working independent to any other environment, practices or industries. So now everything is connected. The economy is designed in a manner now that even a small impact in one process or a business industry can have a huge impact all over the ecosystem. So it means we cannot really rely on financial measurement to ensure continuous growth and development. So we need to have corporate contribution. It's not just the financial aspect, how we are moving and working as a complete unit. So what is our total contribution? Not in terms of business only or money, finance. It should be stakeholder concerns, compliances, risk management, and there are so many other parameters which should be measured to achieve complete assurance. Rest, if you see, customer is again covered. A business process is like operational excellence. There is a change in terminology, but more or less our focus is on measuring critical factors. But there has been a bit of upgradation, like you can say a hybrid model is there with more broader coverage and more better coverage of measurement practices. So this is all about Module 3. I hope you got a basic quick view of what Module 3 is all about: governance, risk, and compliance practices with performance measurement. Now let's take a question. The most likely effect of lack of senior management commitment to IT strategic planning. So the role of top management, senior management, is evaluate, direct, and monitor. Right? Evaluate what is right, what all has to be covered. Direct means proper facilitation and direction should be there. And then lastly, monitor. So the most likely effect senior management is lacking in its commitment to IT strategic planning is lack of investment in technology. Some may say, okay, it may be an answer. It may be a probable answer. Okay. A lack of methodology for system development. When it comes to senior management commitment, senior management is not involved in the methodology, how it has to be implemented. They will only set up what is to be achieved, right? So there are other teams, committees which will take care of this role. So B doesn't make sense. So technology not aligning with organization objectives. This is a clear indication, right? So C looks like probable answer. An absence of control over technology contracts. They are not involved. That doesn't mean they will lose control over the contracts. So A and C may be the probable answer where you have confusion, but if you see, C has more impact. C has more relevance when it comes to impact of lack of senior management commitment. Your technology will not align with what organization objectives are, right? Because they are lacking in understanding how we should shape technology to achieve business objectives, right? Same way, another question, an IS audit department is planning to minimize its dependency on key individuals. Activities that contribute to this objective are documented procedures, knowledge sharing, cross-training, and okay, so they are saying that we must have some strategy, practices which can minimize dependency on key individuals. Such practices can be like you have documentation proper, you have knowledge sharing, you have cross training. What else? Succession planning. Yeah, it may be. Staff job evaluation of jobs, not directly related, I guess. Responsibilities, definitions. I think we are focusing on minimizing dependency on key individual. Okay, we may think, let's redefine responsibilities. It may be there. Employee award programs. No, not necessarily. It doesn't make sense directly, indirectly, maybe. So now the confusion is between A and C. But if you talk about A is direct indication of that we are actually having backup plans, alternatives, succession planning, so that we can minimize dependency on one thing. So I think A is clearly a standout answer. So A is the right answer. So means there could be a lot of questions related to roles and responsibilities, practice of governance, practice of top management, related to principles of COBIT, then risk management around, a lot of questions would be there around risk management, then performance measurement, balance scorecard. So these are the practices that you should revise. You should practice more and more questions around it, right? That way you will be easily able to cover the questions of these topics. Okay, so this was about module 3. Let me just quickly take up module 4 also. Then I will give you guidelines, tips and tricks on how to crack the exam, right? And that is going to really be a key factor for your success. Let me just share the screen. So when we talk about module 4, I told you module 3 was governance, risk, and compliance. Module 4 is exclusively focused on security aspects of information system. It has a lot of coverage, 20%. So we must focus on our information assets and their safeguarding. So there are a lot of risks: hacking, collusion, theft, malicious code, social engineering. So you may get a lot of questions around it. So you must have clear understanding about these terms, what these terms are, right? So these are the risks. They may have threat. They can be threat for our information asset, and they can damage information asset or steal information assets. So they can be questions like, which of the following shall help in deciding upon protection level of information asset? Like there is an information asset, how much security it requires, how we can decide which one is the right or best factor to decide protection level. Location of asset, maybe, but not necessarily that significant. Impact of risk, critical, of course. If there is a possibility of more loss, so we must have more security, right? Vulnerabilities in the assessment asset. Well, you may think that if there are weakness, there may be attack on the asset, but if the asset is not valuable, then it hardly matters, right? So it will not have significant impact on the organization. And the last one is inventory of threats, list of threats. Well, lists of threats will not actually give us that how much protection should be given, because we have to focus on materiality. What is required, only that much coverage should be planned, right? So idea is impact of risk, how much damage, how much loss could be there. That way we should define high protection, medium protection, or low protection. So answer is B. So which of the following is a risk factor that may have impact on organization? Management decide a new application software required by organization is released. Vendor decide to stop supporting existing application. Organization retire old application. I think the highest risk factor is the vendor decide to stop supporting existing application. You're already using the application and vendor is stopping the support. That's a big risk, right? It will affect the operations directly. That's why answer is C. We have done risk management, no need to repeat. So these are the 4 possible responses: avoid, transfer, mitigate, or accept. And you must have proper action plan for every response that you are selecting for a particular risk. Now, which of the following is a risk response option? Determine the likelihood. It's not a response. You are calculating probability. It's not a response. It's a activity which is done in risk assessment. Response comes later. First you do risk assessment, right? Identify risk, evaluate risk. Then based on the impact, overall magnitude, you define the response. And in response, you define strategy, accept, reject, avoid, so on. So question is, which is a risk response? So determine likelihood, not at all. Probability, not at all. Because these comes in risk assessment, not in response. Deciding amount of insurance cover, maybe. Prepare risk profile. Risk profile is a list of risks and detailed specification of risk, not a response. Answer is C. Because this looks like, okay, we want to share the risk or we want to transfer the risk. Okay, let's define insurance cover and follow this strategy and take an insurance cover. So this looks like the right answer. Answer C. After tsunami, a common question, I think is a very generic question. Like there is a tsunami and you're moving your location of data center from coastal to midland. It means you're avoiding the risk. You don't want to exercise the risk or face the risk. You want to avoid the risk. So control practices, audit practices are very important for organization to achieve safeguarding of asset, data integrity, system effectiveness, and efficiency, because there can be so many factors or risks which may affect the organization operations. Then a control is a practice. Either it can prevent, detect, or correct unfavorable scenarios or impact of unfavorable events. But which control to select for what scenario? This depends on control objective. So you must define the control objective. For example, I want to prevent unauthorized access, right? Now there could be various controls for that. You can have biometric, username, password. You can have physical controls. You can have multiple layer of controls. You can have firewall. There are so many things. But unless you define the control objective, you will not be able to select the right control. So control objective is a very important statement that defines the intended purpose that the control should serve. What we are expecting from the control, you have to define that. Only then you can select the right control. Once you define that, you can easily identify which control practice will give more assurance. That is how you can select the right control. And when you are selecting a control, you must define various, or you must consider various factors, like which asset it belongs to, where it will be applied, and how much value that asset has for the organization. What is the location? Accordingly, you may have to do calibration and customization, like which kind of risk it belongs to, how much is the impact of the risk, these are factors that you should define around the control, so that you have the clarity that whether the selected control is actually delivering the right purpose or not. And then you must have a defined owner, who is the owner for the control and who will be the caretaker custodian when this control is in practice, right? So these are some of the practices which should be followed. Then there are various classification when it comes to internal control based on either the methods, implementation method, or types, like administrative control, technical control, physical control. Easy to distinguish based on their nature, right? You can see administrative are policy process, technical are tools, softwares, and physical are guard room and lock room, locks and other physical, like perimeter fencing and all those controls are there. Now, based on types, directive means they are for the purpose of directions, guidelines. So they will not directly, means they will not be physically operational. They'll be facilitator, right? Like guidelines are there, organization structure is there, who should report to whom. So these are again control practices, but they don't have active or physical implementation. So it's like it has to be defined that, okay, what is the organization structure, and people will refer to that to have an understanding of their role. Okay. And so all the directions, all your training manual, troubleshooting manuals, organization structure, policy documents come into this category, directive controls. Preventive is a control which will prevent unauthorized access or any unfavorable event, like your firewall, your biometric login, or all related practices. Compensating control is an important term. It comes into picture when your primary control is not available or not working, or maybe down because of some reason, or maybe is defective. So if your primary control is not there, so your compensating control will come into picture. For example, you have a biometric device, it's not working. So you must have attendance register so that your process should not get affected. Employee should not feel that, okay, system is not working, we cannot mark attendance, so the whole operation would be disrupted. No. So there should be a backup provision, another control which will take care of this responsibility till the primary control is not up and running again. So you can have attendance register, or you can have recording of attendance maybe by some other means, right? Detective control is which actually detect the existence or possible or perhaps realization of any unfavorable event. For example, unauthorized access is there, or somebody has installed a virus, right? So you need to detect unfavorable event which was not prevented. So our preventive control might have failed, so there is a intrusion. Now we have to detect that. For that you have detective controls. Example, you have antivirus, you have logs, you have intrusion detection systems. All such practices are your detective control. CCTV camera is a detective control. Now after that comes corrective control. Damage is there, so now corrective control will come into picture. They will see how much damage is there and they will try to correct the system. Like maintenance practices, all maintenance practices are corrective control. Your backup recovery, recovering the system from backup because system is down or has been damaged, that is also corrective control. So you may get a lot of questions around it. Now security is a very important concern for every organization, and there are security objectives like CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability, and you must have adequate controls to ensure these. For confidentiality you can have encryption, for integrity you can have hashing, for availability you can have say firewalls or captcha code, or redundancy like parallel servers. So there are so many practices which you can use for availability. Now in confidentiality I mentioned encryption, but be very clear, confidentiality can only be achieved if you are using symmetric encryption, or what do you call symmetric cryptography, right? And then there are other practices for security assurance like identification. You must have some mechanism to identify user, like username or ID card or face. So these are identifications. Authentication is by which you verify the identity. Like to verify username, you have password. To verify your ATM card or smart ID card, you have PIN number. So authentication is how you verify the identity, right? So that you can ensure authorized access. Then authorization is to define privileges role. Once somebody has logged in, authentication has been done, like his identity has been verified, he's a genuine user. Now, what he is allowed to do, what he is not allowed to do, privileges should be defined. Need to know, need to do basis. That's where authorization comes into picture. And finally, there is another security practice called non-repudiation. Means the user who has done certain things should not be in a position to deny that he has done it. So you can use digital signature, or you can use some identity factor like mobile number, email address to map with the transaction so that user cannot deny that he hasn't done it. Or in simple terms, you can use digital signatures. Now, every organization must have information security management system where you will have all the practices to secure and safeguard your information assets. And to set up that, you can refer to what you call policies, standards, procedures. You can refer to all these things. And you should be able to achieve CIA objectives. You can refer to ISO standards like 27001. You can refer to other practices by various other agencies there are different bodies all over the world with different kind of security practices or frameworks. So you can take inputs like best part of all, and you can define your own system, security system, so that you can safeguard your information assets. But to define that, you must make sure that these are critical factors. Senior management involvement and commitment is important. They should define information security policy so that there is no confusion when it comes to implementation. They should upfront lay down the objectives of information security. And that is what information security policy does. It clearly defines what we will be doing in information security and what we want to achieve, what we are looking for in terms of information security. And everybody across the organization must have clear understanding. And accordingly, you will define roles and responsibilities. You will conduct trainings, awareness, and then finally, proper monitoring of all the control practices, security practices. But make sure all the compliances are covered. And in case there are exceptions or incidents, there is an incident handling response in place so that you can minimize the impact or damages. So there are so many roles. Every role has a different part to play. You may get question around it. And finally, you must implement these roles in a way, or define these roles with these principles like segregation of duties, 4I principle, rotation of duties, scheme and policies. So whenever you are defining roles, you must cover these factors so that there is no overlapping, there is no lack of segregation of duties. That will lead to more better security assurance practices. Of course, you must define ownership, custodianship, and controlling or monitoring around security practices. Then classification is important. Otherwise, you will not be able to define the right security for right asset. So every asset has its relative value. Like you may classify all the assets in the organization into various categories. Primarily, you can consider 4 categories: public data, sensitive data, client confidential data, or company confidential data. And based on their criticality, now you can see dark red is highly sensitive, right? Most sensitive, perhaps most valuable. So it must have strong controls, stringent controls. Then for client confidential data, of course, secure strong control, but then there could be compliances like data privacy, compliance, GDPR, PCI DSS related requirements would be there. So you need different kind of security practices. Then for sensitive data, you can have basic security principles in place like authentication, authorization of all the activities. And finally, for public access, authorization. Like for public access, they can only read the data. They cannot alter or manipulate the data, but only selected data, which is publicly classified or classified as public. So the idea is to segregate and define appropriate security for the assets based on their value and significance for the organization. And the other factors like who owns the asset, what rights to be given, how much level of rights, all these things are related factors which should be covered while classifying the assets. Now we are talking about controls and control assessment, but there is another technique. Normally auditors do control assessment when they are auditing a system, but in certain scenarios, you will see that the owner of the control, the person who is in charge of the process, is doing the assessment or audit himself. Don't you think it's violation of independence of the auditor? But yes, in certain exceptional cases, we have to follow this practice. Like if it is a very sensitive system, like NASA system, space research, internal government systems, or say defense systems, where you cannot involve independent people to review it. It may, expose the sensitive assets or information. So you need to have internal control practices where you can have control self-assessment. Idea is the person in charge of the control will assess the system as well. Now, important factors like what should be the role of auditor. Your job is to assure, deliver assurance whether risk management process is correct, whether risks are being identified and they have been addressed properly, whether key risks have been mitigated. There are appropriate controls for that. This is what you have to do. Assessment. You're not the one to implement risk management, defining risk appetite. So there can be a lot of question around this. What is the role of auditor? What is not the role of auditor? Now, finally, this module has 4 areas. What are the various controls we can apply in physical security? So there's a big list. So quickly go through these terms. You must have clarity. If there is any doubt, you can revisit the concepts, or you can talk to your friends, peers, or faculties to have a clarity. But these are all key terms which may be asked in the exam. After physical controls comes how we exercise, implement physical controls. So based on the requirement of security, if high security is required, provide high controls, effective controls. For medium security requirement, you have controls which are adequate but not that high, which are there for sensitive location like data center. So again, in same line, like classify the asset, and based on the criticality, you define the security controls. And of course, you must focus on various other factors like location of the asset, what control practices you are applying so that the asset doesn't have any other exposures. And there should be audit trails, logs should be maintained covering critical factors, who access the assets at what time. Then environmental risks are there, and there are a lot of controls around environmental control security. So you must have understanding of all these terms like power supply. For risk related to power supply, there are controls for fire and water seepage and leakage. There are other controls. Fire suppression, there are controls. So just have a quick view of all those things. Same way, logical access. There are various interfaces where you can have logical access attacks. So there can be risk like masquerading, piggybacking. You must have clear understanding of these terms. Masquerading is somebody is taking your identity, spoofing the identity. Piggybacking is like, again, cheating, deceiving, along with that authorized person you are entering. Same way, wiretapping means intercepting, denial of service, you are disrupting the service. Social engineering is somebody is gaining your trust to expose your weakness or exploit your weakness rather. Viruses are programs that may damage your information assets, right? So there are different kind of virus. You must have clear understanding. Then these are the various control practices at logical access control level, like user management, defining roles and responsibilities, and network access control, cryptography, then firewalls. All these are related practices. Same way, control for application, for database and operating system. Idea is to only allow authorized people, right? And they should be only allowed to do what is intended. Need to know, need to do. These are again the repetitive terms. Biometric controls are very significant. And why they are so much used? Reason is they are hard to duplicate or imitate. Though there is error rate, but still organizations prefer them because they are hard to replicate or duplicate. How to break. Then for every operating system, there are categories of controls like mandatory access control, discretionary, where you have the authority to share the content further. Like if you are a user, you own the assets, you can share it with others also. Finally, role-based controls, like if you are an administrator, you have certain privileges. If you are a standard user, you have a different privileges. So, and then at a network level, you have various vulnerabilities. You must have clarity about it, like how much is the impact, because these terms may comes in questions. And impersonation means somebody is using our identity. So avoid these things. Well-known authentication, easy to guess passwords, and please don't means expose your identity parameters like your IP addresses or your other MAC address which can be imitated, and then your system may be accessed in an unauthorized manner. These are some of the control practices for network security. Like, you must have segregated network. It should not be single integrated network. It should have segments. For every department, separate network should be there. Cryptography should be there so that confidentiality is there. Hashing should be used for integrity so that there is never tampering of data. You must have strong authentication. Password policy is used for that. Remote access security. You should not allow remote access. If you are allowing, then you should have at least two-factor authentication. You should have password policy. You should have account lockout policy. If there are multiple attempts of unsuccessful logins, you should lock the account after a certain number of attempts. So there are so many terms involved which you should be aware of. Firewalls are again preventive control for network intrusions, intrusion detection systems, and finally incident and event management program. If there are any incidents, you must have a practice in place. Okay, for this incident, this is the troubleshooting mechanism. Finally, every organization must have proper security operations center, a centralized place from where you can have monitoring and assessment of security effectiveness and monitoring of all the controls. No matter how secure your data center is, how secure your system is, your endpoint device is the most vulnerable point in the whole system. So endpoint device is the device through which you connect to the system, right? Like your laptop device, users are connecting to the system. So you must have clearly defined strong endpoint security policy for all type of devices. That is very important. Then if you're using VoIP, like voice over IP services, like from network, computer networks, you are doing voice-based communication like I'm doing with you. So there are more chances of recording and tapping this data. So you must have encryption when you are having voice over IP kind of service. Finally, penetration testing is a practice used for security assurance, where you will involve experts like ethical hacker to break your system. You will ask them to check, test, and break the system so that you can identify weak areas. So penetration testing is a security practice which can identify weak areas in your system, and then you can fix those gaps. So this is about module 4. So these were the various concepts related to module 3 and 4. Now I'll quickly take you to one last segment, which is very critical: how to plan your exam so that you can ensure your success. Let me tell you, I told you, if you cannot measure something, you cannot analyze or control it. Same way, your exam is there. It's a very sensitive activity which you are going to face. It has a lot of risks. So if you are not having measurement and proper planning, there's a huge risk and you may not be able to achieve your targets. So you must have some kind of practice that can address the risk. So what are the 4 critical factors? First of all, you must have understanding of all the study material and related terminology. So please thoroughly study all the material and make a notes or list of terms which are there for every module. Once you have done that, you must have a technique to attempt the question. If you don't have a technique, you are just reading the question randomly, and yes, you are trying making guesses and all, you'll be stuck up sooner or later. So you must follow a technique, right? The technique I'll explain soon. Then you must have clear understanding of various English terms, because the exam is in English. So if you have if you don't have clear understanding, you will always be in a trap. Like responsibility, accountability, these are different. Your vulnerability and exposure are different. Integrity has different meaning in different contexts. So you must have clear understanding of the concept as per context. Only then you will have a better chance of clearing the exam. Finally, for the exam day, you must have an action plan. Okay. Now quickly I'll explain the technique. When you read the question, read it carefully and skip the question if you don't understand it, without reading the answers. Now, you might be wondering why I'm saying this. Well, the objective is, you have exam of 4 hours, you have 200 questions, right? You know that your brain is a machine, a specially designed machine, which has a capability of processing incomplete data also. You know, neural network, our brain is a neural network. If there is incomplete data, incomplete input, still it will process the data and will give you some answer. So please don't create such risk for your brain. Read the question only, hide the answers. You can put paper or hand. Read the question. If you understand the question, only then proceed further. Otherwise, don't read the answer and move to the next question. I'm telling you, it will save a lot more time and it will keep your brain in a healthy and confident state without any confusion and doubts, right? So if you have second step, if you have understood the question, identify two parameters, key terms and what has been asked. So if you have a pencil or thing, so you can identify these are the key terms, and best is the word which you have to put square mark around it. This is what has been asked. So I have to focus always on the best part when I'm selecting the right answer, because many times we ignore this thing and our answer changes drastically. So please, once you understand the question, identify key terms and what has been asked. Only then you should go and start reading the answer. But if you read the answer before doing these first two steps, you have a big risk of losing the question. You will mark the question wrong, though it would be an easy question. So please follow the step meticulously. Once you understand the question, identify key terms and what has been asked, read the first option, mark it as acceptable or rejected. Write A or R. Acceptable means, okay, I think if there is a confusion, like you think, okay, maybe, may not. So it's better to mark A, acceptable. If you think, oh, it doesn't really make sense with the question, mark as rejected. So means elimination. You eliminate the answer. Then you move to the next. Once you process first option as acceptable, rejected, only move to the next then. Otherwise, what will happen? You are passing two inputs to the brain and you are trying to solve two questions at the same time. Means you are trying to solve two problems at the same time. That is a big risk for your brain. You must understand your brain and use it effectively. You process first option, marked as A or R, then move to the next option, marked as A or R, then third and then fourth. You will see that in most of the question, you will get like, okay, 3 rejected, 1 is the correct answer. If you have better understanding of the concept. In some question, you will have 2 as acceptable, in some 4 as acceptable. So when you have more than 1 in acceptable category, you have to perform impact and relevance analysis. You have to identify, focus on key terms again. What has been asked? What is the focus? Which has more impact? Okay, first option talks about this. It has more risk element. It has more impact. It has more relevance. Accordingly, compare the answer and then select the best one, right? And once you reach to the end of the question paper, revisit the skipped questions. Now, let's say during the first cycle, you attempted, say, 100 questions. You skipped 100 questions. But see what you have done. Your brain is confident. It has attempted 100 questions confidently. So most of the questions would be correct. Now, your brain has only processed with confidence the correct questions, the questions you understood, you read the answers that you understood. It means your brain is working in a very smooth and confident state. Now your brain is ready. If you pass the next 100 questions, which are quite tough for you, your brain has already developed new knowledge and correct knowledge. Now if you will read the questions which are difficult, you'll have more chances of getting more and more questions correctly. So this is a technique which I feel is quite relevant. I have tried it and I have practiced it many times. I have seen it is very effective. Now, I hope you will follow and practice this technique and it will ensure your success. Now comes the action plan. You all know that your exam would be of 4 hours, right? So rather than taking it as a single lap, you should break it into 4 laps. So there should be 4 laps, right? Don't take it as a single exercise, right? 4 laps. Say 1 hour each, or say 55 minutes or 58 minutes each, right? And after every lap, take 1 or 2 minute break, right? Your brain would be more effective and more productive, right? And this is on exam day, right? Before exam day, maybe 1, 2, 3 days before the exam, you should have at least 2 mock tests. Sit for 4 hours. And experience, train your brain to experience this thing, right? If your brain can experience and practice this thing for 2 or 3 times, I'm telling you, on exam day, you'll be more relaxed and more confident. And you will see you'll be more productive also. So this is before exam. Maybe 2 days before exam, right? You cannot really stress your brain. So this is the strategy 2 days before exam. On exam day, you can do this thing and keep a chocolate or small eatable, sweet eatable, so that when you have this break, 1 or 2 minute break, consume that chocolate, because it is easy to digest, quick to digest, and it will not create sleepy feeling, right? Because after 1 hour, your body will lose energy, and you may start getting headache. If there is energy, your body will keep on working, right? So there are small tips. Keep a small chocolate or eatable. Don't have heavy meals with you, right? So that it may affect your whole exam. Small chocolate kind of a thing, or a meal, right? Along with water. Hydration is also important. So these are quick tips which can really improve your productivity. I hope this will help you in planning your exam and clearing your exam. That's all from my side. I hope I have addressed most of the things that were assigned to me. I'm open for any questions if there are. Please, coordinator.
Hi.
Thank you, sir. Oh, I can see Dr. Omkarnath, sir. Good evening, sir. Welcome on board.
Thank you, Dr. Vinasani.
Yes.
For such a knowledgeable and extensive technical session. It was pleasure listening to you, sir. There are a few questions, sir. So the first question is, what are the difference between risk appetite and risk tolerance?
Risk tolerance is the intent of organization to accept the risk, right? Many times, and it varies from individual to individual, how much risk tolerance you have, right? But when it comes to business operations, we need to measure and define it more precisely. So tolerance is the ability to take risk or accept risk, whereas risk appetite is precise measurement that up to what level you will accept the risk, right? It's like financial representation, maybe in financial terms, that okay, up to this level I will accept the risk, but if it goes beyond this, we must have some kind of practice to take up. So I hope it is clear now. Next question.
The next question is, I seem incomplete. Difference of enterprise governance. It is only written till the.
Okay.
Sir, itna hi likha sir, difference of enterprise governance.
I told you that enterprise governance try to address what? Stakeholder requirements, and major role is evaluate, direct, and monitor. Right? Now, there can be different perspectives like business governance, corporate governance, then IT governance. But the governance perspective will remain the same. The scope may change. Evaluate, direct, monitor. Scope may vary, but the perspective will remain the same. So that way you can easily relate these terms. Every like corporate governance will have different working area, but the perspective will like evaluate, direct, monitor. IT will focus on IT value delivery, resource optimization, value creation. But governance focus would be evaluate, direct, monitor. That way you can relate. Any other question?
So next question is, what should one do first, CISA or DISA?
Okay, I think it's a subjective question, but point is both courses talk about information system auditing, assurance practices. Now it's your call if you want to explore more global practices or opportunities. So you may go for CISA, but I think DISA is also gaining popularity. Sooner or later, I think all stakeholders has to take the charge. We may have a day when CISA and DISA might look like equivalent and treated equivalent at all platforms. Yes, any other question?
Next question is from Mr. Sanjay Kumar from Bhubaneswar. So can you provide the presentation for our quick study reference?
Yeah, I think you can drop a mail. I will reply back. I'll send all the PPTs so you can send them, right?
Oh, there is no further question. Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful session.
Thank you, Mahesh. Over to you, Omkar sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before, just give me a second, sir. Omkar sir. Just starting the final technical session for today. I would like to formally introduce our guest speaker for this last technical
Not
session.
required. Time is very less.
Just for 1 minute, sir. Dr. Omkarnath ji. Dr. Omkarnath ji
have given here
Dr.
my
Karnaji did his MSc in mathematics from Gorakhpur University.
Mahesh. I have given
yes,
my introduction here. Let it be. Let us
Okay.
save the time.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay. So this is my introduction. Apart from that, 42 research papers, 24 books, large number of articles, and YouTube sessions. Okay, this is my introduction. Okay, associated with I'm a National Technical Committee member, National Cyber Defense Research Center, associated with NIST, Association of Certified Fraud Examiner, Cloud Security Alliance. These are my okay. So let us start the session. We are having time. None of the question is going to be asked from this slide. Okay, in your ESIT exam. So I don't know how many participants are there, Mahesh?
Sir, there.
Pardon me, I'm not able to hear you.
Sir, there are more than 750 members.
750. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So all of you just listen to me, because you have to listen to me and do one thing. You, for 5 minutes, you take breath from your right nostril. Right nostril means this. Okay. Close your left nostril and take 5 minutes breath from right nostril along with listening. Okay. It's not yoga, but after 5 minutes, you will feel that that is going to help us to sell the session for another up to 9 o'clock, or I can extend little bit. Okay. So whole your ISA, I've been given module 5, 6, 7. Okay. So whole our ISA is based on this security. We are talking about confidentiality, availability, and integrity. Nicely, it has been explained by the previous faculty. Okay. So just for my session, I am telling these are the risks. Only 3 risks is there in IT environment, and these are confidentiality, means information disclosure should be made to the intended user or authorized user, and integrity, modification to data or information may happen by the authorized user in an authorized manner. Integrity having 2 important components. One is the correctness, and second is the correctness, or the completeness and correctness are the 2 important components of the integrity. Availability means information should be available or must be available to the intended user when and wherever promised, and whatever the channel has been promised. On the basis of that, availability should be made. So only these 3 risks are there. And when we are talking about this treatment to these 3 risks, just I am the giving you the review what has been discussed earlier to build up my session. Okay, in all these 5, 6, 7 also only these 3 risks is there. So we have got 4 risk treatment option: avoid, transfer, mitigate, and accept. Okay, where the control is only here at the mitigation. Okay, I call it as a ATMA, ATMA: avoid, transfer, mitigate, and accept. So controls are not there in avoidance, transfer, and acceptance. Only in mitigation we are having the control. Okay. Risk rating, you can understand how much risk is there, that you can understand through the understanding the existence of the organization. Single line parameter. If this risk is going to materialize, how much impact will be there on the life of the or existence of the enterprise. According to that, you can think of that. These controls have been already discussed with you: preventive, detective, and corrective. Risk owners, in general, the process owners on which the risk is there is going to be the risk owner, and eventually they are going to be the control owners. Okay. This is a module 5. I am going to talk about that. These are the levels, different levels, stages we have got in the system development life cycle. Okay. This chapter already you have studied. Most of you must have studied in your that CA course. So nothing special is there. The one special thing which is given here, which is not there in your syllabus, is the secure SDLC. Okay. Auditors are required to be incorporated here. Requirement gathering and analysis. So this is the stage where auditors are required to be engaged, so that whatever the security requirements or control requirements are there can be gathered or can be analyzed, and then further can be designed, developed, tested, implemented, and in due course of time, maintenance can take place. Okay. So this is when we are talking about life cycle. Life cycle means right from the the requirement gathering, or even before that, feasibility is going to be seen. Okay, different type of feasibility is there: legal feasibility, commercial feasibility, market feasibility. All those feasibilities are going to be seen, and after that, we are going to map it, that whether off the shelf or whether there is a need to develop the software, and accordingly, the requirement is going to be developed, and designing is going to be done, coding is going to be done. After coding means we are talking about development, and then testing is going to take place. When we are the testing which is happening in the this development environment, that is done by the programmer, and that is known as alpha testing. A comes first, so development comes first. Remember, like this. Okay, so alpha testing is going to be done by the programmers in the development zone. After that comes to the beta testing. Beta testing, B comes after A. So beta testing is going to be done in the test environment before implementation. In general, it is done by the target audience before launch. Means implementation has not taken place. Now, after that, the implementation is going to take place. So this way you have to understand. And after implementation, whatever the problems are there, that is going to be taken care during the maintenance period. Okay, so auditors can understand from here that how much whether the user requirements are met or not, looking at the maintenance log, that how much changes are going to be made into the system, change control log. What are the audit points here? Ensure that documentation is complete. Review the QA, quality assurance report, on adopting the coding standard by the developer, so that post development the proper support can be achieved. Review the testing and bugs found report sent for the rework to the developers, and why it has happened, whether alpha testing has been taken proper or not, or UAT has been done proper or not. Different types of testings are there. Unit testing is there. Unit testing means we are talking about a small unit. You can take example of your Excel or MS Word, where you are having a file. So in menu item, you are having a file. So file is going to be tested if any changes. In file, different types of options we have got. Different types of options means we have got, we have got this open, new, close, save as, like that. Then we are going to see the interface testing. If your software is having interface to some other components or other systems, so interface testing is going to be done. Then integration testing is going to be done with the this component or this software is going to be integrated to the other softwares where there is a need for integration. And complete system testing is going to be done. You can also understand that before going to the production, it is going to be understood that whether it is having compatibility of all the components of that environment or not. Okay. And regression testing is known as a testing which is done also for the components where modification has not taken place. Okay. What happens? We are trying to understand through regression testing whether changes at one component has impacted to other component or not, or might have impacted to the other component. So you are trying to understand that one, whether the changes in one component has made impact on other components or not. So for that purpose, those components where the changes has not taken place, there also the changes are going to take place, and the testing is going to be done, and that is known as the regression testing. Regression testing is a very common in today's scenario. How the implementation is going to take place? We are having the cutoff. From a cutoff that you are going to stop the older system and newer system is going to work. Okay, this is the cutoff. From this date, old system will be discontinued, new system will come. Or phase manner. Phase manner means if you are having 6-7 modules, so you are going to implement modules in the phase manner. Not all modules are going to be implemented in a one phase or at one time. Pilot is a system of implementation of the applications or the softwares. First, the implementation of the software is going to take place only at a specified location or selected location where all modules, all options are available. So first, they are going to run the new software as a pilot on those locations. Once they are going to satisfied with that, if any modification is required, those modifications are going to be made. After that, it is going to be implemented across the enterprise. Parallel, means older system and newer system, both are going to run parallel. Results are going to be matched. Results means the statements or whatever the reports are going to be generated, those are going to be matched. And after that, the over a period of time where users' full satisfaction is there, the older system is going to be discontinued, parallel is going to run. But parallel is going to run, parallel is recommended for such systems which are small in nature or small in processes, where big systems like ERP, we cannot go ahead with the parallel run. For that purpose, either the phase manner or the pilot is recommended. Best way to test is do the implementation through the pilot, and then you spread it or implement it across the enterprise. Okay. This is the new concept which has come, embedding security throughout this application development. It is known as a secure system development lifecycle. Okay. Here, a new concept which has been introduced, which is known as a threat modeling. Okay. Stride, Mitre, OWASP, Dragon. These are the threat modeling tools through which threats are going to be understood and vulnerabilities are going to be understood in the design of the system. And after that, design means you understand that whatever say we are talking about a user, we as a user, our machine is a endpoint or browser is there. Through this, we are accessing the internet banking server of the bank. So this is a design. I am the user. I am accessing and my browser is going to the internet banking server of the bank. So this is the design. In between that, we are going to see through the threat modeling that what problem will be there, and that is the threats. If going to compromise the vulnerability or if existing vulnerability is there, then it is required to be addressed before the final sign off is going to be given. These are the different roles and responsibility. A steering committee, which is headed by some board level member or who is having interface to the board, who is heading this one, going to ensure the whatever a strategic decision is there regarding the implementation of the project. Okay, you know the hierarchy is the portfolio, program, project. Okay, so portfolio may have multiple programs and programs may have multiple projects. So we are having a project manager, we are having the program manager also. Okay, within the project we may have a different modules that can be taken care by the module leader or the team leader. Okay, system analyst job is to analyze and design the system. Okay, how the older system is working, what type of transition is required, how processes are working, how data flow is there, where storage is there, where transaction is going to be stored. All those things are going to be, design is going to be taken care by the system analyst and designer. Okay, these activities most of the time in the system development is going to be spent here. After that, hardly 10% time is going to be spent by the programmer, because programmer has been given all logic, everything. Simply programmer has to use the coding language to develop that one. Database administrator is different from the data administrator. Data administrator is going to structure the data. Okay, but when data comes into the database, then the database administrator comes into the picture. Quality assurance QA team is going to ensure that the objective, user's objective is met or not. Whatever the user's requirement or the business process requirements were there, that has been met or not. Testers are there. Testers are going to develop the test cases or test data. They are having expertise into that. Expertise into that means they are going to take care of all the possibilities for the testing, and for that the data is going to be generated. You can take the example of the Y2K. That time the people, those who have developed the operating system, have not taken into consideration the year 2000. So that's why we are having the problem. But testers, they do that type of activities. Domain specialists, they are going to give us the consultancy job or going to give us the knowledge that what type of the business process or activities or sub activities are there within that. Technology specialists, they are going to tell us about the technology which should have within for the system and should have the compatibility, or for that purpose what is required. And most important thing is the document specialist is going to develop the document which is going to be read and understood by in the absence of the document, the author of the document. IS auditor, we are the IS auditor. Our role is to assess that if any risk is there. Before implementation, we are going to see. After implementation also, it is going to be seen. Different role of auditors are there. Those auditors who are there at this level at the requirement gathering level, they and design level, they cannot come to the testing level. And those who are at the testing and implementation level, they cannot come to the maintenance level. Okay, because there will be the conflict of interest, because whatever you have designed, the same recommended for the design, the same you are implementing and then testing, and the same you are going to see into the production environment. Production means the maintenance phase. The IS auditor, as a member of the team, IS auditor can ensure that the controls are required for process for which the application is being developed are included in the requirements right from the beginning. Then the design is going to take place and the development will take place. Can take the example, maker and checker. If that comes in the requirement, then design is going to be made like that. We are going to put a requirement that maker cannot be checker, checker cannot be maker. Then that type of control is going to be implemented. Okay. Then there are three concepts. Here we have taken the certification and accreditation. One more concept is there, which is known as a benchmarking. Benchmarking means the whatever the statements about the software has been given by the developer, means the OEMs. Those statements are going to be tested. Those statements can be, or those the whatever the they are telling that these facilities are there, these limitations are there, these controls are there. Those are going to be, or this much speed is there, this much processing can take place. So those statements are can be tested by the organizations, those who are going to use it, or can be tested by the third parties. When it is going to be tested by the third parties, it is known as a certification. Okay. And when we are doing, this is known as a benchmark. We means the enterprise. And after satisfaction with the benchmark statements, organization is going to, or the senior management of the organization is going to give the final permission for the implementation of the software. Okay, so that is known as accreditation. Means formal approval for use in the enterprise. There are concept of data conversion and migration. Both are nowadays it is used synonymous, but there is a difference wherever a structural change is taking place in the data, it is known as a data conversion. Otherwise, if you are changing the platform from Windows environment to Unix environment, we are coming, or DOS environment to, or from MS Access, we are going to the RDBMS, then it is known as a migration. If there is no change in the structure of the data. Okay. If there is a change in the structure of the data, it is known as a conversion. So in today's scenario, where such type of migration is going to take place, conversion is also there. We cannot assume that there may not be conversion. It has become implied that conversion may happen due to the complexity of the job. Change management is going to ensure that whatever changes are there, changes are going to take place in the enterprise or in the software should take place as per the business requirement. And the changes should be approved. Okay, only approved changes should take place into the system. Okay, and for that purpose, there is also arrangement of auditing the change management. Auditing change management means, what are the concept? Concept is that whatever changes, we have to ensure as auditor that whatever changes has taken place into the system, there is a approval of the change management. So auditing change management is a reverse the dimension. We are not going to take the document and going to see change into the system. Then everything will be fine. So what we are going to do as an auditor, we are going to take the logs or sample the changes from in the system, and we are going to ask for the approval by the change management. Then we can understand whether any unauthorized changes has taken place into the system. Okay. So auditing change management is a reverse dimension. Okay. Question answer you can put at last. We are going to take. Okay. So, and looking at the paucity of time, this PPT I'm going to share with you. Okay. So I'm going to move to the next module. That is our module 6. This is business application software audit. Okay. So when we are talking about the application control, what does it mean? We are trying to control the processes and information. Information controlling information means CIA. The confidentiality of the information. Information means that includes everything, services also, the assets also, skills also, that comes under the information. It's a macro definition. So the whatever the confidentiality aspect of the information is there, integrity aspect and anonymity aspect, that is required to be managed through the controls. What is control? Control means putting some limitation or putting some resistance. Control means some resistance is there. That resistance may be through the controls you have discussed in the previous session. That is your directive control, preventive control, detective control. Deterrent control is also there, compensating control is there, and corrective control is there. Okay, so through that, application controls are part of the internal controls. Okay, these are part of the internal control. So processes control, maker checker, which comes from the process. Process means the business process. Okay, IT processes are also there, user registration. That is IT process. But business process where manipulation of data is going to take place. The heart of the information system is going to be the data, but that is required to be manipulated, that is residing in a separate environment or separate system which is known as the database and manipulated by the application. So whatever control we need to implement, we are implementing through the application. Okay, that's why there is a segregation. The application administrator cannot handle the data administration job, and data administrator cannot have control over the application. And that's why another is there. What is the application? Application is a program, and that how that program development has taken place, that program development has taken place as per the business rules or business process rules. So who is owner of the application? Owner of the application is the IT, not the business. Business is owner of the data, because data manipulation is going to take place through the application. So if both are going to be the for both the owner is same, then there will be conflict of interest. So that's why the businesses, they can only request for changes into the application, but they cannot modify the change. They cannot make changes into the application. Sorry. Changes to applications are going to be made by the IT. Okay, that is that. Now, what is the objective of application control? Key business requirements are there. I have told you. Integrating two important components are there. That is completeness and correctness. So we are talking about the completeness and accuracy. Okay. Then we are talking about validity. Validity means three-way validation is going to take place. That whatever say we can tell, whatever the physical or the inventory is there, it is as per invoice. Okay. And whatever invoice is there, that data is there into the system. Okay. So three-way in the system, on the paper, and in the existence. Okay. That validation is going to take place. Authorization, already it has been discussed with you. Need to know, need to do, and list privileges. When we are talking about need to know, need to do, this is with the data. This is with the business process. But when we are talking about privileges, privileges means that you have got certain rights to act on the system. That system, if you are an application administrator, that system could be application. If you are a system administrator, that system could be the system where you are going to act on that. If you are network administrator, that system could be network. So where the privileges means you are having right to act on the system. Okay. The need to know, need to do with the business process and the data. So that's why different administrators, they have got the privileges. In general, the administrators, they have got the privileges. But all administrators, they do not have all privileges. So that's why the thumb rule is telling need to know, need to do, and list privileges. Give only that much privileges, that much right to act on the system, which is required for discharging their duties or responsibilities. Okay. Segregation of duties, the concept is of the maker and checker, 4 eyes that I already discussed in the previous session. So those is also going to be taken here. Whatever the business requirement is there, that is going to be implemented through in the application. Information criteria, this is the security requirement. CIA. Already I have talked about that. Okay. This is your fiduciary or legal requirement. That compliance and the reliability. Reliability means we are talking about the origin of the data or origin of the process. We are talking about the correctness, that how much we can rely on the source of that information. So that's why it is told that collect the information from the source. So in lieu of taking a balance sheet from the ROC or from the this stock exchanges or the SEBI, we should take a balance sheet from the company side, because they are going to, that is the origin of that data. Rest may tell that maybe some technical problem is there, or they can give the disclaimer in case of any dispute. The original version is huge. The original version of the balance sheet is of the company. So original version will be acceptable. The way the disclaimer is given, that even though it is a translation, but in case of dispute, English version will be acceptable in the court of law or whatever. This is, we are talking about with the business process or with the data. So if you will take the effectiveness means meeting the objective. Objective of the control has been discussed with you, that what is the objective of the control. Okay, so effectiveness means meeting the objective. Efficiency means optimum utilization of resources. So this is the information criteria: meeting the objective, optimum utilization of resources, disclosure of information to the intended user, correctness and completeness of information, availability of information to intended user, and compliance to the applicable laws and regulations, systems and procedures, and the origin of the information or the data. This already I have talked about. It is a duplicate slide, single slide. Okay, now moving to the module 7. Okay, we are talking about business continuity. But business continuity business continuity management is a macro concept, which it includes everything. Okay, the subset is in the business continuity management, we have got BCPE and DRP. Business continuity planning includes, or it has got the disaster recovery planning. Okay, disaster recovery planning. What is the difference between disaster recovery planning and business continuity planning? Disaster recovery planning is planned to recover the business processes in case of disaster through IT means. Okay, means you are having alternate site, you have got contingency site, hot site, mirror site, cold site, warm site, or reciprocal site, mobile site. Through that, the recovery of the business process is going to take place. But apart from that IT means, there could also be the recovery of the business process, say the manual means, which is the fastest means to recover the business processes. It is not possible everywhere, but otherwise it is the fastest means to recover the business processes. So how we are able to differentiate wherever recovery of business processes in case of disaster is going to take place through the IT means, then it is known as a DRP. It is part of the BCP. It is annexed to the BCP. Okay. So whenever we are doing drill and other things for the alternate site, contingency site or DR site, then we are using the DRP. Okay. Most important thing that this is business continuity management or BCP or DRP is for critical business process. Okay. How to understand the criticality? For that purpose, you can understand there are, how many systems are there in human body? Okay. Forget about that. Which system is the most critical? Somebody will tell heart, somebody will tell brain, somebody will tell nervous system. No, but the most critical system is your respiratory system. Every organ in the body needs respiration. No, that's why you used to tell breath last. No, last breath. Antim saas le liya. So after that, rest of the component, after some time, they will stop working 2 to 6 hours. That is the 6 hours is the outer limit. Brain, half an hour. That's why brain dead is going to be declared after half an hour. Okay. So the way the respiratory system is most critical. Why I am telling it is most critical? Because we need to understand what is the time criticality. After how much time of the disaster or interruption, those business process should be recovered. Otherwise, it will become fatal to the enterprise. So here we are talking about the only critical business processes during the disaster. What is disaster? Say what is incident? First, we'll try to understand what is incident. Any event, whatever activity is happening, the event. Any event having potential to impact is the incident. Series of incident is a crisis, and series of crisis is a disaster. Okay, so this way you can understand. Okay, so any event having potential to impact, having potential, not impacting, not necessarily going to impact, having potential to impact is the incident. Series of incident is crisis, and series of crisis is disaster. So till the time the disaster is not going to be declared, these plans are not going to be activated. Okay. Now there is a need for incident management plan, because the incident may impact the enterprise or may lead to the disaster. So we are trying to understand risk. I have told you the risk is a future component. Okay, till the time it is not going to materialize, it is existing. The moment it materializes, it is debited to the profit and loss account. The risk is not existing. Okay, so we are trying to understand that if this risk is going to materialize, how much impact will be there on the business and on which business process. So through that, we are going to understand the criticality, and according to that, during the disaster time, how much activities or sub-activities of that business process should run is going to be decided into MBCO, minimum business continuity objective. During the disaster time, say you can take the example, the payment system. Okay, withdrawal is there, cash withdrawal across the counter, check withdrawal across the counter is there. Also through the clearing it is happening, through the ATM it is happening, through internet banking, through mobile banking, through wallet, through RTGS, NEFT. Large number of different other systems are also there. Okay, but during the disaster time, how many such payment activities should run, and in what criticality it is going to be recovered? So that is the minimum business continuity objective. And within how much time it should be recovered? That is the time criticality. Recovery time objective. After the interruption, within how much time? 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 1 day, 2 days. After how much time it should be recovered? That is the recovery time objective. Recovered means services should start. Business process become operational. RPO, recovery point objective, means with how much old data you can recover the business process. Okay. So if you want to recover the business process payment, cash payment, or internet banking payment, ATM, okay, with how much old data you can start, or clearing, RTGS. Okay. If you are meeting this, then it is known as it is meeting the service delivery objective. So during the disaster time, what level of services are going to be delivered? Okay, not necessarily that cash withdrawal means all cash withdrawal is going to be made. So we have seen the disaster where the demonetization has taken place. So sorry, So that time, what happened? There was a restriction of the payment. So that was the service delivery objective. Okay. Yes, the one concept I have left here, the emergency management. Okay, evacuation, fire drill, even the earthquake drill and other drills are also happening, flood drill. So emergency management team is going to take care of that. Most important asset in the IT environment is human resource. And that's why first the human life is going to be saved. After that, business processes are going to be recovered. Okay. Different phases of disaster are there. Okay. So the crisis is going to take place. During the crisis or the disaster time, the first what is going to work is the emergency management team is going to work, and incident, according to that, DRP, the recovery of the business processes are going to take place. Okay. So emergency response team is going to act first. After that, the recovery of business processes are going to take place. And when the situation becomes normal at the primary side, then the restoration of the business process at the production site is going to take place. Okay, that is happening. So this is when we are recovering the business processes during the disaster time or the crisis time, then we are going to recover the business process according to the criticality. Okay, according to criticality, it is going to be recovered. But When restoration is going to take place, restoration means bringing back business from alternate site or contingency site to the production site. In that case, the least critical business process is going to be brought first. Reason being, it was already a disaster hit. So through least critical business process, we can test it. Okay. Testing, 5 testings are there, checklist testing. When the DRP has been developed, then the checklist is going to be sent to the business process owners. Till the time they are not satisfied, they are satisfied, the modification into the checklist is going to take place. Now, in a structured walkthrough, the different process owners of the critical business process, because BCP is only for the critical business process. So they are going to sit together and they are going to see the dependability. No. So a structured walkthrough test is going to be done. Simulation test, it will happen on the cold site. I will explain what is the cold site in the further slide, where the server is going to be brought. Maybe the application is going to be loaded or data is going to be loaded, but transactions are not going to take place. So till the simulation test, transactions are not taking place. Only we are going to see the preparedness. Okay, preparedness of the contingency assets or the resources is going to be seen. After that, the parallel test is going to be the test where the transactions are taking place at both sides, production site also, contingency site also. And whatever outcome is there or reports are there, that is going to be compared. In full interruption test, manually the disaster is going to be created. Manually disaster is going to be created means what? You are going to stop the production site and going to run the critical business process from the DR site or contingency site, and recovery of the primary data center is going to take place from the contingency site. Okay. Only after 2 to 3 years, full interruption test is going to be done, but not for all modules. Again, it is going to be done for the module wise. Otherwise, what will happen? It will become fatal to the enterprise. These are the different sites are there, cold sites. The cold sites, warm site, hot site, mirror site, you can understand that according to the criticality given. If you have a RTO, means if this disaster is going to hit your enterprise or organization, after you have got more than 24 hours time or more than 72 hours time, then you can go to the cold site. Where cold site means your infrastructure is the, your race flooring, data cabling, electrical cabling, UPS, air conditioners are there. Server is not there. Communication lines, that is there. Server is not there. In case of disaster, the server is going to be brought, data is going to be taken from the offsite, loading is going to be done, those activities are going to take place. Warm site, where some servers are there. Not identical, but some servers are there. And there maybe application operating system is loaded and data may require to load, or you are having also backup at that warm site. Okay. So 24 hours RTO. Hot site, 4 hours to 24 hours, where compatible servers are there for the critical business processes. Data shipment is also taking place. Data updation is also going to take place according to the RPO. Mirror site, identical site, not identical server, identical site. Whatever is there in the production is there in the alternate site. What does it mean? Creating a duplicate data centers, okay, which is going to be very, very the critical in nature. In some circumstances, say RTGS system, they have got mirror site, 2 mirror site, 1 production site. All are working like a production site. So sometimes the production is going to take place from some other mirror site. That is happening. Okay. This is what I wanted to discuss with you. Okay. This is all about these 3 modules. Okay. I have got the questions and I will tell you how to prepare. Most of the things Dr. Sani has taken care. Few things I will add. Okay. So before that, I will request Mahesh that you start the question answer. After that, I will go to the how to crack the ISA. Mahesh, you are there? Jay, can you see the chat? Any questions are there? Can you see that? Yeah, Mahesh.
Sir, I am searching for the questions.
No questions are there. People are tired of it.
Yeah, so there are sir, there are no questions.
Wonderful.
So we thank you, sir. We thank you for such a wonderful and knowledgeable.
Just allow me 2-3 minutes to share that.
Sir, I have just I am having a question. What is the difference between hot site and cold site?
Hot site and
cold site.
Cold site. All that depends upon that how much period is allowed to you, or interruption period is acceptable to you. We are talking about the RTO. Okay, RTO means this is the recovery time objective. This is going to tell that what is the cold site. Cold site means we are having only the infrastructure. The raised flooring is there, air condition is there, data cabling is there, UPS is there, power supply is there, but servers are not there. Okay. In hot site, identical servers are there. Data is also going to be updated there. Maybe periodicity may be different. Every 5 minutes or 1 hour updation is going to take place, but it is there. Backup of the data is also there at hot site. So recovery of the data may take place within 4 hours from the hot site. Generally, this is going to be told by the best practices. Cold site, more than 24 hours to 72 hours.
Okay.
Okay. So now whatever, okay, you people can give feedback in the chat to Mahesh that whether you are having any change in by breathing only with the right nostril. Okay. That is the way to create energy within you. When you are feeling tired, when you are, because 4 hours, this is adult learning, sitting 4 hours and continuously go on reading and making decision is not easy job. So that way you can freshen up yourself, okay, by giving more oxygen. Okay, this is the right one is the Pingla. Pingla means we are giving the sun. Sun means we are giving energy. Okay, and you can also try out in the night after this session. You can use it the left nostril. This is Ida, and you can sleep. Within 5 minutes you will sleep. Okay, so that you can do. Most of the things Dr. Sani has told. Few things I wanted to tell you. That have the concept clarity that he has also told, but how have the concept clarity when you are doing the mock test? Okay, first I will tell how to read your module. Okay, no, every time you are not going to read everything because exam is very near. So jot down what concepts are not clear. Get clarity of those concepts. Okay, till the time 100% concept clarity is not there. Okay, have the concept clarity. Second thing that you, while answering, wherever 100% confidence is there, you answer and skip it. Go to the last. Come back again and you can do that one. Okay. But when you are doing the mock test, the attitude is that wherever the question is wrong, we are going to read the explanation, which is the right one only. But that way you are going to prepare yourself for only one question. You read all the explanation. In that way, in one question, you are going to prepare for 4 questions. Okay. So that is when you are going to do a mock test of 200 questions. Then you are going to prepare 800 questions. If you are going to read explanation of all correct questions or wrong questions. Wrong questions means not question is wrong. For you, you have chosen the wrong answer. So read all options. Okay. Have a reading of that. That is not only give you a better preparation for the large number of questions, but it will give you the concept clarity as well as will show you that what could be the other dimension of the question that will be there. And the last thing what I wanted to tell you, this is my personal experience. We are the adult. We are having a legacy of experience. So we are going to also read many things which is not written in the question because we are the practitioner. We are having legacy of experience. spend 5 minutes time to see how 5-year-old kid is going to read. Again, I am repeating how 5-year-old kid is going to read. A, P, P, L, E. Not going to read A for Z or X. So you start learning how to read the question. The way the 5-year-old kid is going to read. Read only the question stem, what is written. Don't assume at your own. Every question is going to be the individual question, going to be a different question. Don't carry forward it. Okay. So this is all from my side. All the best. And before I conclude the session, happy CA day for tomorrow to all of you. And you can say happy Doctor's Day for me. I'm a doctor. I'm a yoga therapist. So Doctor's Day and CA day both are the same day.
Thank you, Dr. Omkarnath for such a detailed and technical session. And that only breathing through right nose really helps. It was, yeah. So we wish you a Doctor's Day in advance. All the best to all the members who are having their exam on 9th July. Jai Hind, Jai IC.
Yeah, all the best. Thank you. God bless you.